Lin Jing followed behind Yunling until he reached the maximum range of observation mode. As soon as Yunling left the observation scope of the apocalypse, Lin Jing no longer hesitated and called out to the system. System, activate the fixed-point teleportation function. Lin Jing knew that the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had been closely watching any movements near Yunling. Even the possibility that Yunling was sent to the Li family might very well be a trap laid by the Immortal Sect's ancestor. Their purpose was to draw him out. Although he had anticipated this, Lin Jing didn't care. Killing Yunling was essential, and Lin Jing was confident that he could escape from the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect after slaying Yunling despite the distance. As Lin Jing finished speaking, his observational perspective shifted, and everything in the nearby area came clearly into his view. Lin Jing then chose a spot beside Yunling and used fixed-point teleportation. After Lin Jing made his choice, the system's prompt sounded again. Ding! Host has used fixed-point teleportation function. 1 harvest point deducted. Remaining harvest points 16879. Right after the system's prompt ended, Lin Jing was transported out of the system space and appeared at the previously selected location. After Lin Jing emerged, before he could make a move, a voice reached his ears. As expected, I guess correctly, you really possess that extraordinary, mysterious spatial treasure. Accompanying the voice was an extremely terrifying divine sense oppression. This divine sense oppression was very formidable. Even though Lin Jing was well prepared and concentrated his divine sense power for defense, the defense couldn't last very long. In just a moment, the divine sense oppression suddenly intensified, breaking through Lin Jing's defense. Fortunately, Lin Jing had another card up his sleeve. As the divine sense was about to breach his defenses, Lin Jing had already called out to the system again. System, activate bonus attachment function. As Lin Jing's words fell, the system promptly responded. Ding! Bonus attachment activated successfully. 5 harvest points deducted. Current remaining harvest points 16874. Note, bonus attachment lasts for 5 minutes, after which 1 harvest point will be deducted per minute. With the sound of the system's voice, Lin Jing's divine sense surged, and the dreadful divine sense oppression significantly weakened at that moment. At this time, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had already made his move. The ancestor of the sect drew out a crimson flying sword and launched it at Lin Jing with incredible speed. The Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor followed closely behind the sword, aiming to kill Lin Jing. At this moment, Lin Jing couldn't afford to worry about what was behind him and turned his focus toward Yunling, who was not far ahead. He burst forward with extreme speed, pouncing towards Yunling. Lin Jing's sudden appearance stunned Yunling for a moment, but it was just for an instant before Yunling reacted. Once Yunling recovered, he hastily called out, "Master Lin Jing." However, Yunling had only let out those few words before he abruptly stopped because Lin Jing had already appeared in front of him. Having arrived in front of Yunling, Lin Jing had already gathered the 5 elements power, which this time wasn't just 1 or 2 streams, but dozens converging into a cluster. Indeed, it was even more than he had used when annihilating the ancestor of the Yun family. It had already surged forth, penetrating Yunling's body. As the 5 elements power entered Yunling's body, Lin Jing bellowed, "Explode!" Afterward, Lin Jing did not look back and flew forward once more, because he could clearly sense that the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was closing in from behind, and if he delayed even a moment longer, it might be difficult to escape. As for Yunling, there was no need to pay him any further attention, as his fate was already sealed. The 5 elements' power exploded within Yunling's body, which was now enveloped in a 5-colored aurora. Under the influence of the 5 elements' power, Yunling's body began to slowly disintegrate. Yunling's face was filled with terror, and by the time the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect caught up, hope flickered across Yunling's face upon seeing him. Then he pleaded, "Master, save me." This cluster of 5 elements power was immensely powerful, Even the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor frowned and did not get too close. 5 Elements Divine Art. The Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor said with knitted brows. After speaking, he turned his gaze back to Yunling. By then, Yunling's condition had worsened, as one of his arms and a leg had completely disintegrated, and another arm was left with only half. Yunling, panic-stricken, beheld the dazzling 5-colored aurora with increasing alarm. Like a flame fed by oil, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't extinguish it. At this point, Yunling turned to the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor again, about to seek rescue, but he saw that the Ancestor had begun to move. Yunling's heart surged with overwhelming joy. Just when Yunling thought he would be saved, the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor did something utterly unexpected. The Ancestor extended a hand, transforming it into a blood-red palm that passed through the 5-colored aurora and landed on top of Yunling's head. Yunling, sensing impending doom, quickly said, "Master, what are you doing?" However, the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor did not reply, and a flash of red light in his eyes was followed by the appearance of a blood-red spiritual power at the top of Yunling's head. It was then absorbed into the palm. As the blood-red spiritual power emerged, Yunling's body disintegrated even faster. Yunling screamed out in agony. Then, his eyes filled with anger, he looked at the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor. "Master, why are you doing this?" Only then did the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor spoke. "Lin Jing used the 5 Elements Divine Art. You are undoubtedly going to die this time. It's a pity. I originally wanted to wait until you transformed into divinity, then refine you to aid me in advancing to the solidifying body realm. Now, there's no way around it. Since you're bound to die, I can only absorb your cultivation ahead of time for my own use." When the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect spoke these words, his expression was calm and his tone was untroubled. But to Yunling, these words thundered in his ears. Yunling looked at the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, his eyes filled with disbelief. You took me as your disciple, just to refine me." The elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect didn't stop his movements, saying indifferently, "Of course, with the Yun family, you're not worth my attention. Otherwise, why do you think I took you as my disciple, teaching you demonic techniques? So that's how it is." Only then did Yunling come to a realization. However, there was no chance for him to regret it anymore. By now, under the influence of the 5 Elements power and the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, Yunling's body had mostly dissolved. Only his upper body and head remained. At this moment, Yunling's face was full of regret. It was unclear whether he regretted practicing demonic techniques or joining the Nanming Immortal Sect. Later, Yunling looked at the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, his eyes brimming with immense hatred. Today, and at this moment, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect exerted more force, and the blood-red spiritual power above Yunling's head momentarily thickened. In just a moment, all the spiritual power within Yunling's body was absorbed by the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, and without the support of spiritual power, Yunling instantly died. Until the moment of his death, Yunling's eyes were still wide open, looking at the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, his hatred unabated. Soon after, Yunling was completely devoured by the 5 Elements power. After absorbing Yunling's spiritual power, the aura of the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect grew even stronger. Yunling's death was known to Lin Jing. Indeed, there are no such things as pie falling from the sky in this world. Yunling, who thought he was inducted by the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, only realized at the last moment that it was all a lie. Once the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect had absorbed all the blood-red spiritual power from Yunling, he stayed in place for a while, apparently absorbing. After he finished absorbing, Lin Jing had already flown far away. The elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect looked up in the direction Lin Jing had fled, and then a cold smile appeared on his lips. He then took a step and pursued Lin Jing. The area of the Nanming domain is actually very large. If it were hundreds of thousands of years ago, it would have taken Lin Jing at least several years, or even more than a decade, to cross the Nanming domain. But since the catastrophe a million years ago, when an unknown object broke through the boundary and fell into this cultivation world, and that unknown object landed right in the middle of the Nanming domain. At that time, the Nanming domain could be said to be the strongest existence among the four domains. It housed a large number of cultivators, even in the Mahayana and Tribulation realms, making up about 40% of the entire cultivation world. But that catastrophe covered more than 90% of the Nanming domain. Most of the Nanming domain, apart from the surviving areas, turned into forbidden zones. In the regions engulfed by the catastrophe, whether they were cultivators or mortals, not one escaped. Such a huge event immediately caught the attention of the entire cultivation world. After sensing the catastrophe, forces from the other three domains and the demonic and monster inner sea sent powerful beings to investigate the center of the catastrophe. Some went alone, and some went in groups of 2 or 3 into the range of the catastrophe. However, after entering, some people didn't stay long before they hurriedly came out. Upon their return, each of them was pale as if they had encountered something extremely terrifying. Others stayed inside a bit longer. When these people came out, each of them was extremely haggard, as if they had suddenly aged a lot. Of course, there were also some who entered and never came out again. Those who came out from the center of the catastrophe, after returning, were unanimous. That was the region shrouded in catastrophe, and from then on, it was a forbidden zone where no cultivator was allowed to approach carelessly. Thus, after that announcement was made, the powerhouses from the other 3 domains and the demonic sea within the Nanming domain left directly. From then on, the Nanming domain completely declined, and the area, making up over 90% of the Nanming domain that was struck by catastrophe, was called the Barren Forbidden Zone. It was named the Barren Forbidden Zone because within the whole zone, there were no living beings, only endless spirits. And now, Lin Jing was on the outskirts of the Barren Forbidden Zone. The outskirts of the Barren Forbidden Zone, where the Nanming domain bordered the Barren Forbidden Zone, still some distance away from the Barren Forbidden Zone itself. The sky here was gloomy, looking extremely oppressive. Looking up, one's eyes met dry trees and layers of fallen branches and leaves that had accumulated unknowingly over a long time. Moreover, there was no sound here. The world between heaven and earth was utterly silent. Lin Jing hovered in midair, with only the whistling wind carrying a smell of decay and his own faint heartbeat beside his ears. This place had no living beings, not even insects or the like. Standing here, Lin Jing's heart inexplicably throbbed, feeling as if there was something especially dangerous existing inside the Barren Forbidden Zone. Lin Jing looked toward the interior of the Barren Forbidden Zone, furrowing his brows in thought for a moment before continuing to fly inward. Although the Barren Forbidden Zone was dangerous, it was not unexplored. Long ago, when Lin Jing was browsing books at Elder Yu's place, he had seen some descriptions of this Barren Forbidden Zone. There were even some notes left by people who had ventured into the Barren Forbidden Zone. Those who had explored the Barren Forbidden Zone all shared one piece of unified advice. That was, when entering the Barren Forbidden Zone, one should not stay too long. Moreover, one should not go too deep. Also, be extremely cautious in everything. Especially when facing spirits, it's best to hide and not get noticed by them. If one accidentally encounters spirits, one must flee quickly. Otherwise, the spirits will gather in increasing numbers, and by then, even if one wants to escape, they won't be able to. Furthermore, in the Barren Forbidden Zone, those spirits are protected by a mysterious force and cannot be killed. Lin Jing's appearance here was naturally to escape from the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. This was something Lin Jing had thought of beforehand. The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was too difficult to deal with, and Lin Jing was simply no match for him, only able to use the special nature of the Barren Forbidden Zone to buy some time. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing from the initial mountain range to the outskirts of the Barren Forbidden Zone, had taken half a month's time. Half a month ago, Lin Jing had already secretly sent out a message, instructing Li Qingqing to take the Li family members and Yi Yun to leave the Nanming domain and return to Liyan Island. And Lin Jing was leading the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect toward the Barren Forbidden Zone. Now that half a month had passed, Lin Jing assumed they had already left, and he no longer had any concerns. If Lin Jing could now escape from the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, he would be free of worries. However, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect clung to him like a persistent plaster, never loosening his grip no matter what. Especially when Lin Jing, during a crisis, produced the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect became even more convinced of his own thoughts. He clung tightly to Lin Jing, determined to take him down. Lin Jing was also extremely speechless, but helpless. The situation at that time was too perilous, and Lin Jing had to take out the Great Dream Ancient Mirror and forcibly activate it, allowing him to barely escape. Furthermore, after that incident, because Lin Jing had forcibly used the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, he paid a considerable price, and after escaping, he rested in the system space for several days before he recovered his strength. Lin Jing was also very grateful that he had previously studied the method of forcibly using the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. Otherwise, that time would have been truly perilous for him. Not long after Lin Jing departed, another figure appeared where Lin Jing had just been. This figure was none other than the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect looked up, his brow furrowed as he gazed in the direction Lin Jing had fled, and then he snorted coldly. Trying to enter the Barren Forbidden Zone to escape from me? Humph! Delusional! The treasures on you won't escape. They are all mine. Saying this, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect flashed and chased into the Barren Forbidden Zone. In the Barren Forbidden Zone, spiritual energy is extremely scarce, even more so than outside the zone. The reason for this, some speculate, is a mysterious substance from 1,000,000 years ago, which continuously absorbs spiritual power, thus creating such a scarce spiritual energy environment. Moreover, apart from the scarcity of spiritual energy, there's another characteristic within the Barren Forbidden Zone, a characteristic that instills fear. At this moment, Lin Jing was inside the system space, looking at the age column on the system panel. Lin Jing, 77/997. Spiritual root. 5 elements spiritual root, medium grade. Cultivation. Nascent soul 8th layer, 7%. Lin Jing's lifespan had reduced. After just 1 month in this Barren Forbidden Zone, Lin Jing had lost 3 years of life. It seemed as if something terrifying inside the Barren Forbidden Zone was constantly stealing his life. Ever since entering the Barren Forbidden Zone, Lin Jing felt that something was not right, but he had never been able to pinpoint what it was. Not until he opened the system panel and saw his lifespan did Lin Jing understand what was happening. However, even so, Lin Jing did not dare to leave the Barren Forbidden Zone recklessly. At this time, an old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had been watching him like a tiger eyeing its prey, wanting to kill for treasure. Without dealing with him, Lin Jing would never have peace of mind. Next, Lin Jing closed the system panel and then spoke, summoning the system. System. Enter observation mode. As his words fell, Lin Jing's perspective appeared on the outside. At this moment, Lin Jing was on a bare nameless peak. This nameless peak was once a sect's location, but this sect had been destroyed 1,000,000 years ago, and its cultivators had died in that catastrophe. Apart from the wind-eroded, barely recognizable remains of ruined walls, there were only Een spirits drifting all over the mountain. These Een spirits, all transformed from cultivators who died in the catastrophe, still roamed the once sect location even after 1,000,000 years. It seemed they were guarding everything here. Although these Een spirits appeared mindless, one must not let them detect the presence of the living. If one were to carelessly expose oneself, these Een spirits would immediately pounce like wolves that had smelled blood. Moreover, these Een spirits were extremely troublesome. Their strength was formidable, roughly equivalent to their cultivation during life. Besides, it was fundamentally impossible to annihilate them, giving them an invincible existence. If one were to carelessly expose oneself, and they latched on, the only option would be to find a way to escape or face certain death. Nonetheless, fortunately, these Ain spirits had a strong sense of domain and would not venture too far from their territory. Therefore, there was still hope for escape. Lin Jing had been observing this peak for a while, and he had completely mastered all the situations on the mountain. This place was the trap Lin Jing had set for the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, one that was enough to be fatal. In fact, Lin Jing had used the Ain spirits to obstruct the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect before. It was not the first time. He had used them many times before. Because of the existence of the system space, Lin Jing was absolutely fearless of the Ain spirits. Even if the Ain spirits ensnared him, he could hide in the system space and escape their wrath. Thus, Lin Jing had used the Ain spirits several times to try to shake off the pursuit of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. However, because the location they were in was too remote, those Ain spirits were too weak to stop the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. The Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor could scatter all those Ain spirits with a single strike. Although they could reassemble, it was meaningless. With no other choice, Lin Jing had to continue to venture deeper into the barren Forbidden Zone to find stronger Ain spirits. Finally, he found this mountain peak. This peak, which was previously a Sect's location, had many Ain spirits on it, and the strength of these Ain spirits was not weak. There were Ain spirits ranging from energy refinement level to nascent soul level. Originally, when Lin Jing first discovered this mountain peak, he was somewhat disappointed as he did not find any divine transformation level Ain spirits. But after a careful investigation, he finally noticed some irregularities. Seeing the scale of this sect, there should have been more than 10 nascent soul level Ain spirits. Logically, such a sect should have had divine transformation cultivators in residence. With curiosity, Lin Jing used observation mode and dived deeper. Finally, in what should be called the back mountain of the sect, he discovered 2 divine transformation level Ain spirits. These 2 divine transformation level Ain spirits were in an odd cave on the back mountain. The cave was quite peculiar, covered by a barrier of light on the outside. No matter how one probed with divine sense, it was impenetrable from the outside. It was only under observation mode that Lin Jing could probe inside. Moreover, around the cave, there were traces of a formation left from earlier times. Clearly, this cave must have been a secret place of the sect a million years ago. Within the cave, those 2 Ain spirits also differed from the others. The other Ain spirits, lacking consciousness, wandered aimlessly until they encountered humans and attacked. If left undisturbed, they roamed without purpose. But the 2 Ain spirits in the cave sat cross-legged, as if like in their living days, cultivating in meditation. And at the position of their minds, already being spiritual bodies, each harbored a dull green glow. Although these 2 Ain spirits had not moved, Lin Jing believed that they were certainly extraordinary. On their way, they encountered wandering Ain spirits, which they simply grabbed and swallowed. Since those Ain spirits lacked any consciousness, they naturally did not resist and were swallowed by the 2 Ain spirits. After swallowing several Ain spirits, the blue light in the minds of the 2 divinity transformation Ain spirits brightened slightly. The 2 divinity transformation Ain spirits did not endlessly devour other Ain spirits. After swallowing a few, they left and returned to the cave. Watching the 2 divinity transformation Ain spirits resume their meditative posture, Lin Jing then controlled the perspective and returned to the grand hall to continue observing. Not long after, the Ain spirits that had been devoured by the divinity transformation Ain spirits slowly began to condense and resurrect. These Ain spirits truly were undying. Even when consumed by higher-level Ain spirits, they could resurrect. This was vastly different from the outside world. In the outside world, although Ain spirits were formidable, they were also easily killed, and once killed, they would disappear forever never to resurrect. However, in the barren forbidden zone, the Een spirits could be eternal, which was baffling. To unlock this secret, it seemed one could only start from the mysterious substances at the center of the cataclysm. But the center of the cataclysm, which had been the central area of the Nanming domain, was filled with powerful beings who had now turned into Een spirits. Let alone Lin Jing. Even the top cultivators from the Eastern Spirit Realm would not dare to venture deep into it recklessly. Lin Jing naturally would not take the risk either. As for this barren forbidden zone, Lin Jing planned to deal with the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect and then leave immediately. This place was just too eerie. Leaving aside those Een spirits, even the relentless reduction of lifespan within this barren forbidden zone was unbearable. Now that Lin Jing had been here for some time, he estimated that the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect would soon catch up. Lin Jing then controlled the observation perspective and moved above a mountain peak, watching the direction from which he had come. He had already left tracks, just waiting for the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect to take the bait. After waiting for more than an hour, Lin Jing finally saw the figure of the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Soon, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect arrived near the mountain. At this time, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect had an extremely somber expression, and his clothes were somewhat disheveled, but he was not in the mood to tidy them up. The lengthy pursuit had nearly exhausted his patience. Whenever Lin Jing encountered an Een spirit, he would directly hide inside the system space. And the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect had been fighting his way through, although those Een spirits he encountered could be dispersed with just one move. However, the Een spirits were immortal beings, and even if dispersed, they would reappear after not too long. Moreover, in the barren forbidden zone, where spiritual energy was extremely scarce, it became very difficult for him to recover his spiritual power. Therefore, the further he went, the more cautious the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect became, and he dared not act rashly anymore. Upon reaching the vicinity of this mountain, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect did not enter it immediately. Instead, he stayed far away and began observing the mountain. Now the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, after being tricked by Lin Jing for this period, had become extremely cautious. He did not enter the mountain immediately, which was within Lin Jing's expectations. However, the puppet carrying his own aura and the Great Dream Ancient Mirror had already been placed inside the Grand Hall, and Lin Jing believed that the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect would surely detect them. Now it was just a matter of whether the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect would enter or not. About that, Lin Jing was very confident. The elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect would definitely come in, even though he knew it was a trap. It was the perfect counter to the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Within observation mode, Lin Jing re-examined the entire mountain once again. While observing, Lin Jing was also pondering his next plan. Soon, Lin Jing's observation was complete and his plan was ready. After getting ready, Lin Jing immediately initiated fixed-point teleportation and transported himself to the mountainside outside. The old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was best at tracking. Over this past month, no matter how Lin Jing tried to hide, he was always found. Since he couldn't escape, he might as well leave some traces intentionally for him to follow. Fixed-point teleportation was effective, and Lin Jing's figure instantly appeared on top of the mountain. The location Lin Jing chose for fixed-point teleportation was right in the middle of the mountain, still some distance from the two divine sensing spirits. As soon as Lin Jing appeared, he immediately smelled the decaying odor that had accumulated over the years. At the same time, the surrounding Een spirits, wandering about, suddenly charged at Lin Jing like sharks drawn to the scent of blood. Lin Jing was prepared for this, and two streams of five-colored aurora instantly appeared in his hand. Then, with a wave of his hand, the five-colored aurora flew out directly. The speed of the five-colored aurora was swift, swiftly darting among those Een spirits. Any Een spirit that was passed through by the five-colored aurora immediately dispersed like scattered sand. While choosing his position, Lin Jing had already observed that the cultivation of these Yin spirits from their previous lives was not high, the highest being only at the Golden Core stage. After eliminating these Yin spirits, Lin Jing quickly arrived in front of a dilapidated great hall. This great hall, judging by its appearance, must have been an incredibly luxurious sect hall. But 1,000,000 years had passed, leaving this originally luxurious sect hall riddled with holes, and these holes were formed after the hall was damaged. Lin Jing then entered the great hall through one of these holes. As soon as he entered, 2 Yin spirits attacked Lin Jing from the left and the right. Lin Jing instantly activated the 5-colored aurora in his hand, attacking the 2 Yin spirits. These 2 Yin spirits, with nascent soul stage cultivations from their former lives, were quite troublesome. While Lin Jing was using the 5-colored aurora to entangle those 2 Yin spirits, he himself flew swiftly towards the depths of the hall's ruins. Inside the hall, everything was in a state of ruin. The columns that originally supported the great hall, several of which were already damaged, lay haphazardly here and there. From their luster, it was not hard to see that these columns were made of very precious materials. These materials, extremely durable, could even be used as artifact refining materials. Even so, durable a material could not withstand the ravages of time and had become fragile. All the way to the depths of the hall, Lin Jing quickly took out a puppet from his space ring. This puppet had been obtained from the Puppet Guild during his time in the Devouring Spirit Blood Realm. Next, Lin Jing opened the puppet's body and then took out the Great Dream Ancient Mirror from the space ring, placing it inside the puppet's body. After placing the Great Dream Ancient Mirror properly, Lin Jing also condensed a mass of spiritual power and transferred it into the puppet's body. This was a small trick, such that if anyone touched the puppet, it would immediately self-destruct. Of course, self-destruction was not the goal. Lin Jing mainly used the puppet's self-destruction to lure out those 2 divine sense Yin spirits. After transferring the spiritual power, Lin Jing also left a trace of his own aura on the puppet. Having done all this, Lin Jing placed the puppet on the ground. Yet as soon as it was placed on the ground, the puppet directly caused the floor to collapse and sank down. This showed that the entire Great Hall was extremely decayed, unable to even support the weight of a puppet. With a rumble, the sound traveled out, although it was not very loud. But as the sound spread, Lin Jing immediately sensed something was off. Next, Lin Jing promptly extended his divine sense. And after Lin Jing extended his divine sense, he immediately saw 2 vague shadows rapidly approaching from the direction of the cave. Seeing this, Lin Jing didn't dare to stay any longer and muttered to himself, "Enter system space." Then, Lin Jing's entire figure vanished from the spot, returning to system space. Once Lin Jing was back inside system space, he immediately called out to the system, "System, enter observation mode." Immediately after, Lin Jing's perspective shifted and he appeared outside once again. At this moment, the place that Lin Jing's perspective was located was right inside the Grand Hall. In the Grand Hall at that time, those 2 divinity transformation level Yin spirits were standing by the entrance of the cave where the puppet was located. They just stood there, staring blankly at the puppet below them. Behind them, dozens of Yin spirits were wandering around. These Yin spirits had all been attracted by Lin Jing previously. Some had come from other places, while others had just been dispersed by Lin Jing and resurrected themselves shortly after. The immortal nature of these Yin spirits was quite bothersome. Even though they could be dispersed and vanish before one's eyes, after a while, they would regroup and resurrect themselves. After observing for a while, the 2 divinity transformation Yin spirits did not touch the puppet or the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, but turned around and flew out of the hall instead. After all, Lin Jing did use the Great Dream Ancient Mirror as bait. Given the character of the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect, he would definitely take the risk to try it. Otherwise, he would not have pursued Lin Jing for so long. At this moment, the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect frowned as he looked towards the mountain peak. Clearly, he had already sensed Lin Jing's presence. And so, Lin Jing just waited for the next move of the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect. The Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect first furrowed his brow hesitantly. Then suddenly his expression changed. He looked astonished and incredulously at the great hall on the mountain. Seeing the expression of the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect, Lin Jing knew that he had discovered the puppet and the great dream ancient mirror within its body. The puppet, under the envelopment of the divine sense of the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect, was almost unable to hide at all. The great dream ancient mirror within the puppet's body was naturally easy for him to find. But this was exactly the result Lin Jing wanted. After discovering the great dream ancient mirror, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect did not rush forward immediately. Instead, his brow furrowed even tighter. After that, he saw his eyes sharpen, intently staring at the mountain peak. Lin Jing understood that this must be him using divine sense, meticulously exploring the entire mountain. The position of the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect was very clever, as there was still a significant distance from the mountain peak. Therefore, those Yin spirits did not discover him and were still wandering aimlessly. Time passed for a while longer, and the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect turned his head, looking towards the location of the cave with a slightly furrowed brow. Clearly, he had also discovered that place. Watching the cave, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect thought deeply for a moment and then started to make his move. He took a puppet out from his space ring. This puppet was different from Lin Jing's. It was somewhat similar to the golden armor puppet of Ancestor Yun of the Yun family. However, this puppet was the size of an average person and completely black in color. After taking out the puppet, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect gave it a pat, and it immediately opened its eyes. Instantly, two beams of golden light shot out from the puppet's eyes. Then, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect manipulated the puppet and began walking towards the mountain. It seemed he wanted to use this puppet as a scout to retrieve the great dream ancient mirror. The puppet was not very fast, but took steady steps towards the mountain peak. And the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect stood in place, watching the puppet make its way up the mountain step by step. Seeing the puppet approach, Lin Jing chose not to act, but continued to observe in observation mode. When the puppet stepped into the area where the Yin spirits roamed, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect deliberately controlled the puppet to make some noise. However, those Yin spirits acted as if they hadn't noticed and continued to wander. Seeing this, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect continued to control the puppet, calmly moving it up the mountain. Thus, without any mishaps along the way, the puppet eventually reached the mountaintop. As the puppet stepped onto the summit, its foot fell upon a piece of flooring that had long been decayed. Crack! With a crisp sound, the floor tile, made of an unknown material, shattered. As the floor tile shattered, two shadowy figures swiftly flew out from the entrance of the cave. These two shadows moved extremely fast, heading towards the puppet. These were precisely the two divine transformation level Yin spirits. In just an instant, the two Yin spirits reached the puppet. Then one of the Yin spirits let out a piercing scream and directly passed through the puppet's body. As the Yin spirit passed through the puppet, it immediately collapsed to the ground, motionless. After dealing with the puppet, the two divine transformation Yin spirits ascended into the sky, looked around in a circle, and finally set their sights on the distant Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect. Upon seeing the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect, the two spirits didn't hesitate and swiftly flew towards him. When he saw the two divine transformation Yin spirits flying towards him, the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect's complexion instantly changed. However, he didn't panic and quickly took out his magical treasure, and the red demonic chi around him also solidified even more. The two Yin spirits' speed was fast, arriving in front of the Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect in just a moment. The Patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect was not to be outdone, immediately sending his magical treasure flying towards the spirits. The patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect, who trained in demonic techniques, had read demonic qi surging around him. At the same time, he manipulated his magical treasure, relentlessly attacking the two spirits. The spirits, however, opened their wide mouths, emitting ear-piercing howls, and continuously launched assaults on the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect. The patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect was indeed formidable. Although the spirits were formidable, they couldn't best him in an instant. However, after entangling for a while, the two spirits changed their mode of attack. As they attacked, they emitted black ripples from their mouths. With each encounter, these ripples reduced the red demonic qi around the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect a little. Moreover, as the battle progressed, the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect's complexion grew even paler. Meanwhile, Lin Jing used observation mode to watch the combatants. At the moment, although the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect was at a disadvantage, it was not yet a matter of life or death. Lin Jing felt that he seemed to have other plans, as if he was testing the two Yin spirits. While fighting, the patriarch moved closer to the mountain peak. But the two spirits relentlessly pursued him, preventing him from being distracted. And as the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect neared the mountain, the two divine transformation Yin spirits grew even more powerful. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, as the patriarch of Nanming Immortal Sect approached the middle of the mountain, he finally could not hold on any longer. Lin Jing turned and fled. The two Yin spirits also followed and chased after him. Lin Jing had originally wanted to watch the outcome of the battle, but the distance of the observation mode wasn't sufficient. So, Lin Jing just waited there. This time, Lin Jing didn't wait long, not even a quarter of an hour before the two divinity transformation Yin spirits flew back. After they returned, they immediately went back into the cave. Sometime after the two Yin spirits had come back, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect eventually returned as well. This time, he stood far away, not daring to enter the range of this mountain. Having fought with the two Yin spirits just now, the aura of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was very unstable. Moreover, this time his complexion was extremely pale, indicating that he must have paid a significant price to escape from the two Yin spirits. After the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect returned, he continued looking towards the hall on the mountain, frowning inevitably. A moment later, he withdrew his gaze. Then he directly took out an elixir medicine from the space ring and put it in his mouth. Following that, he sat down right there with crossed legs and began to recover from his injuries. From the time the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had tangled with the two Yin spirits until they left and then came back. During that period, Lin Jing had simply been observing in observation mode, with no thought at all of coming out. Even now, although the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect seemed to be seriously injured, Lin Jing had no intention of making a sneak attack, let alone the possibility that the other party could be pretending. Even if he really was injured, Lin Jing wasn't necessarily able to do much to him. Just as the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had mentioned before, the gap between the divinity transformation and nascent soul stages was truly vast. If Lin Jing were now at the divinity transformation stage, even at the initial level, he would dare to have a fight with the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. But being only at the nascent soul stage, Lin Jing could only extinguish that thought. Just like that, Lin Jing patiently waited for the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect to recover from his injuries. He wasn't in a hurry at all now. He knew that, given the nature of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, even if Lin Jing never appeared, as long as the great dream ancient mirror remained there, he would definitely not give up. After all, it was a Taoist treasure. As far as Lin Jing knew, there wasn't a single Taoist treasure in the entire Nanming Immortal Sect. So, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect would definitely not give up. This time, the treatment of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect took several hours. And Lin Jing also waited for several hours. Hours later, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect finally finished healing and stood up again. At this moment, he looked much better than before. After standing up, he didn't take any immediate action, but carefully observed the mountain. After observing for a while, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect moved slowly closer to the mountain. Seeing this, Lin Jing immediately perked up. Lin Jing knew that the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect couldn't hold back any longer. Indeed, as Lin Jing had expected, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect approached the mountain. After nearing the mountain, he quickly flew towards it, his speed quite fast as a cultivator in the divinity transformation stage. By the time the Yin spirits had noticed him, he had already made it to the mid-slope. Moreover, on his way up, he didn't make any noise, and the two divinity transformation Yin spirits in the cave didn't appear. The old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect couldn't help feeling pleased and continued flying towards the top of the mountain. Soon, he reached the mountaintop. Although he attracted the attention of those Yin spirits, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect showed no panic as the demonic qi around him surged powerfully and tangled towards the Yin spirits like tendrils. The Yin spirits entangled by the demonic qi quickly turned to dust one by one. The old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, while exterminating the attacking Yin spirits, walked towards the hall at the mountain peak. Upon reaching the hall, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect first sent a wisp of demonic qi inside. Seeing no anomalies, he then plunged into the hall himself. At this very moment, Lin Jing was using observation mode, following behind him. Lin Jing knew that once the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect got his hands on the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, he would definitely flee the area at once. So Lin Jing was ready to act at any moment. If he tried to escape directly, Lin Jing would definitely obstruct him immediately. In just a moment, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect reached the puppet. Then he condensed demonic qi and shrouded the puppet in it. It seemed he intended to envelop the entire puppet. However, at the moment the demonic qi touched the puppet, it ballooned enormously. The old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect instantly realized something was wrong and hastily tried to control the demonic qi to prevent the puppet from exploding. But by then, it was already too late. Boom! The puppet exploded immediately with a thunderous noise. The explosion was powerful, blowing the entire hall apart and blasting a huge crater into the ground. Although the explosion was significant, it posed no threat to the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. However, making the puppet explode wasn't intended to injure the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, but had another purpose. After the explosion, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect immediately realized and hastily summoned his magical treasure. But just as he wielded his magical treasure, two shadowy figures reappeared from the cave and charged directly at the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. At this moment, the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect wasn't focusing on the two divinity transformation Yin spirits, but was scanning ahead, seemingly in search of something. Just as the two divinity transformation Yin spirits were about to rush over, the eyes of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect suddenly lit up, and his face showed an excited expression. Following his gaze, directly ahead was the Great Dream Ancient Mirror that had been blown away by the puppet explosion. With no one controlling the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, it had just been blown away by the puppet's self-destruction. Upon seeing the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect immediately couldn't care about anything else and rushed toward the mirror without hesitation. He was determined to get his hands on the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. However, just as he was about to rush over, the two divinity transformation Yin spirits had already surrounded and attacked him. Seeing the two divinity transformation Yin spirits assaulting him again, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect's eyes narrowed, and then the demonic qi on his body surged and burst forth violently, enveloping the entire area around him as if it were tangible. Even the two divinity transformation Yin spirits were temporarily trapped in place. After the outburst of demonic qi had controlled the two divinity transformation Yin spirits, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect's complexion also turned a few shades paler. It appeared that the last attack had cost him a lot. At this moment, he couldn't wait any longer to get the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. Lin Jing was also in the system space, witnessing this scene. Lin Jing immediately felt elated, seeing this as an opportunity. Following that, Lin Jing did not hesitate to use the fixed-point teleportation. The location he teleported to was not near the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, but right beside the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. As the fixed-point teleportation completed, the Great Dream Ancient Mirror that had been blown away landed right in the hands of the suddenly appearing Lin Jing. After grabbing the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, Lin Jing immediately held it in front of him, directing the mirror toward the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, while concentrating all his spiritual power into the mirror. The sudden appearance of Lin Jing startled the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, who then exclaimed in shock and anger, "Damn it, this was all your trap." However, seeing that Lin Jing was preparing to launch an attack on him, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect did not dare to delay any longer. He quickly gathered his divine sense and charged toward Lin Jing's sea of consciousness, attempting to stop Lin Jing. The divine sense attack of the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was fast, rushing into Lin Jing's sea of consciousness in an instant. Lin Jing, struck by this divine sense attack, immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and that blood, whether intentionally or unintentionally, was all sprayed onto the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. However, this blood was absorbed by the Great Dream Ancient Mirror in just a moment. After absorbing the blood, the Great Dream Ancient Mirror immediately began to change, emitting a hazy green light. At that moment, Lin Jing felt as if he had a blood connection with the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. Lin Jing's spiritual power was being wildly absorbed by the Great Dream Ancient Mirror, and in just a short while, nearly half of it was drained. However, at that moment, the Great Dream Ancient Mirror was finally under Lin Jing's control, and the entire mirror was activated, emitting a dangerous aura. Lin Jing looked up at the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect across from him, with a trace of a smile on his blood-stained lips. "Thank you for your help." The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, seeing the Great Dream Ancient Mirror activated, immediately felt a chill down his spine. After that, he could no longer care for anything else and hurriedly retreated, attempting to flee. Previously, Lin Jing had used the Great Dream Ancient Mirror before, and if one were caught by it, even he could not escape falling into the trap of a dream state. If it were anywhere else, it might not matter, but here, with the two divinity transformation Yin spirits and Lin Jing watching like a tiger hunting its prey, if he were to be suddenly caught by the Great Dream Ancient Mirror and fall into a dream, he would likely suffer severe injuries at the least. Therefore, the only thing to do now was to flee from this place and avoid the two divinity transformation Yin spirits. Of course, Lin Jing understood the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect's thoughts very well. The moment the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect made a move, a beam of light had already shot out from the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect tried desperately to dodge, but it was to no avail. The light emitted from the Great Dream Ancient Mirror immediately induced a dream state upon contact. No matter how fast the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was, he could not escape the light from the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. After a standoff, the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect failed to evade and was struck by the light from the Great Dream Ancient Mirror. After being hit, he immediately stopped in his tracks, his eyes becoming vacant as he fell into a dream state. With the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect trapped in a dream, the two previously bound divinity transformation Yin spirits were instantly freed from their restraints and howled as they charged toward the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. The Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor was at this point being reflected by the Great Dream, ancient mirror, plunged into a dream state. There was simply no way to avoid it. The two divinity transformation spirits reached the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor in the blink of an eye. One of the spirits transformed into a ghastly evil ghost with a ferocious face and opened its huge mouth to swallow the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor's head. Meanwhile, the other spirit turned into a wisp of black mist, instantly wrapping around the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor, who thus found himself completely unguarded and entangled by the two spirits. Immediately after, the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Damn! The Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor cursed. The attacks of the two divinity transformation spirits brought him swiftly back from the dreaming state. At this moment, the two spirits clung to the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor's body, their mouths wide open, continuously draining the essence and blood from him. The aura of the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor quickly became feeble. It was at this time that the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor summoned a palm-sized ancient bronze bell. Following that, he activated the small bell, and immediately the sound of the bell resonated loudly. Dong, dong, dong. The bell rang incessantly, and when the sound reached Lin Jing's ears, it was like thunder, striking directly into his sea of consciousness. Lin Jing suddenly felt dizzy and nearly lost his senses. The two divinity transformation spirits were directly affected by the sound of the bell and could no longer endure it, immediately detaching from the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor's body. The spirits constantly changed shapes under the influence of the bell sound, while screams emitted from their mouths. Originally being spiritual bodies, their screams should have been silent, yet they clearly reached Lin Jing's sea of consciousness, and their faces twisted with rage, their eyes emitting a strange red glow as they glared furiously at the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor. At this moment, Lin Jing felt as if those two divinity transformation spirits seemed to possess their own consciousness. Lin Jing quickly focused his mind to counter the effect of the bell sound. After barely stabilizing his divine sense, Lin Jing swiftly summoned the Ling Flawless Sword and then circulated the Ling Sword control spell, directing the flying sword rapidly towards the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor. But the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor had been prepared ever since Lin Jing had summoned the Ling Flawless Sword. While controlling the tiny ancient bronze bell above his head, a golden light curtain cascaded down from the bell, completely enveloping the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor within it. Simultaneously, the sound of the bell also came to a stop. Seeing this, Lin Jing quickly steered the Ling Flawless Sword towards the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor. The attack of Lin Jing's Ling Flawless Sword on the light curtain formed by the small bell resulted in a loud bang. Dong! This sound, like a bell, caused the two divinity transformation spirits, who had just been freed and were about to continue their attack on the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor, to involuntarily let out a scream. However, the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor was now looking towards Lin Jing, his hands ceaselessly moving as numerous seals morphed between his fingers. At this moment, Lin Jing suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. As the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor continued forming seals, a cluster of golden light appeared above Lin Jing's head, growing stronger and stronger until it eventually formed a seal stamp. As the seal stamp materialized, Lin Jing felt as if the space around him had become a cage, confining him in place, immobilized. Lin Jing had previously heard that some divine transformation cultivators' divine arts had confining effects. This divine imprisonment wasn't like a spell that used spiritual power to bind, but instead, it confined the space itself, and the seal stamp the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor was forming seemed to be a divine art only divine transformation cultivators could cultivate. Seeing that Lin Jing couldn't move, the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor showed no hint of triumph, but instead, His eyes were cold as he stared at Lin Jing. At the same time, his hand movements became even faster. With the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor's continuous seal forming, the seal stamp above Lin Jing's head also became more solidified. The aura emitted from the seal stamp grew increasingly terrifying. Lin Jing looked up at the seal stamp, his brows deeply furrowed. Even the two divinity transformation spirits, due to the appearance of the seal stamp, halted their attack and instead looked up blankly at the seal stamp as if their past memories were being invoked. Having been targeted by the divine art, Lin Jing urgently summoned the system. Fortunately, Lin Jing quickly sensed a response from the system, and entering the space posed no problems. He was then assured. Lin Jing then attempted to continue controlling the Ling flawless sword. Although his body was confined, it didn't have much of an effect on his divine sense. Thus, Lin Jing controlled the Ling flawless sword and continued his attack on the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor. This time, Lin Jing's target was not the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor. At this moment, he was enveloped by the golden light released from the tiny ancient bronze bell, and even if he attacked, it would not have much effect. Lin Jing's target was the tiny ancient bronze bell above the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor's head. The ancient bronze bell, like the Ling flawless sword, was a Dao artifact-level magical treasure, and its grade was even a bit lower than that of the Ling flawless sword. Currently, the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor was concentrating on a divine art and could not be distracted, which was the perfect opportunity. As long as the ancient bronze bell was shattered, without the protection of the bell, the Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor would have no choice but to face the two divinity transformation spirits. That was Lin Jing's intent. As Lin Jing steered the Ling flawless sword towards the small bell, the seal stamp above Lin Jing's head had also fully formed. A terrifying aura emanated from the seal stamp. Divine skill, a Nanming Immortal seal. Fall! With a shout from a Nanming Immortal Sect Ancestor, the seal stamp above Lin Jing's head hurtled down toward him. Simultaneously, Lin Jing's Ling flawless sword was already nearing the ancient bronze bell. Clang! First came the sound of metal clashing, followed by a crack, as if something had shattered. After the two noises, there was the boom of a huge explosion, and then dust and smoke splattered all over the mountain peak. Inside system space, Lin Jing patted his chest, still feeling frightened. That had been too close, but fortunately, he had managed to strike the ancient bronze bell first in the end. Right before entering system space, Lin Jing had also heard a crack, suggesting his plan had worked, and the small bell was likely damaged. Eager to know more, Lin Jing hastily called out to the system. System, enter observation mode. As his words fell, Lin Jing reappeared outside with an observer's view. From Lin Jing entering system space to re-emerging with an observer's perspective, only a few moments had passed. The seal had only just been cast down on the mountain for a short while, and dust and smoke were everywhere, shrouding the entire mountaintop and obscuring the view. With no other choice, Lin Jing had to control the observer's view to rise. After ascending, he could see the entire mountain peak. At that moment, the dust and smoke on the mountain furiously churned, with red, black, and golden lights piercing through the haze. Clearly, the battle between the Nanming Immortal Sect Elder and those two divinity transformation spirits had resumed. As their fight intensified, the dust and smoke on the whole mountain scattered due to the residual effects of their battle, revealing the full view of the mountaintop. Upon seeing the mountain again, Lin Jing gasped in shock. The entire mountain peak had a large chunk sheared off, almost 1/5 of the whole mountain. That location was exactly where Lin Jing had just been. Obviously, it was the result of the Immortal Sect Elder's use of his divine skills. He had not expected the divine arts to be so powerful. It was good that Lin Jing had ducked into system space, because if he had been hit by that seal, even with his substantial body refinement cultivation, he likely would have had difficulty withstanding it. Lin Jing then looked to another area. At that moment, the Nanming Immortal Sect Elder was battling the two divinity transformation spirits. The elder's face was grim, his face pale, his aura somewhat unsteady, and he appeared to be in a rather bad state. There was also the ancient bronze bell, which had a clear crack on its body that seemed to be not too severe. And yet, it was still being wielded by the elder in his hands, using it to fend off the two spirits. But the power of the bell's sound had greatly diminished and could no longer threaten the two spirits. It only delayed them momentarily. The two spirits, however, seemed enraged, growing increasingly fierce. Facing the vicious spirits, the Nanming Immortal Sect elder was forced to retreat. Finally, after detonating one of his flying sword magical treasures and stopping the attack of the two spirits, the elder retreated rapidly. Although he had managed to withdraw, the Nanming Immortal Sect elder was not lightly wounded. After retreating, the elder wiped the blood from his lips, his gaze turning towards where Lin Jing was, his brow deeply furrowed. Meanwhile, the two spirits gave the Nanming Immortal Sect elder no chance to leave, swooping down on him again with a howl. But at that moment, the elder simply raised the ancient bronze bell in his hands and swiftly formed hand seals while shouting, "Explode!" Having just detonated a flying sword, the Nanming Immortal Sect elder now chose to detonate the ancient bronze bell as well. The self-destruction of the small bell created an intense fluctuation of energy that spread in all directions, accompanied by the bell's final chime. This sound was incredibly vast, instantly resonating throughout the entire mountain. As the bell's sound passed, the two divinity transformation spirits immediately froze in place, motionless, and other spirits on the mountain disintegrated into dust upon the sound's passage. Even the mountain itself was leveled, leaving no trace of what used to be the Sect's location. After setting off the self-destruction of the ancient bronze bell, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect didn't have time to grieve, as he quickly turned to retreat. He wanted to leave the mountainous area immediately. As he was leaving, he still remembered to extend his hand and retrieve Lin Jing's flawless sword that had fallen to the ground. His ancient bronze bell was a medium-gray Dao artifact, incomparably tough and ordinarily not susceptible to damage. Yet today, it was damaged by Lin Jing using that transparent flying sword. So that transparent flying sword must be an even more mighty Dao artifact. However, he didn't have time to examine it now. His priority was to first escape from this place, or else when the two divinity transformation spirits regained consciousness, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. However, just as the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect turned to leave, he hadn't managed to get far. He then saw the suddenly appearing Lin Jing. That's right, Lin Jing appeared so abruptly in front of him. When the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect saw this scene, even though he had lived for over 1,000 years, he was shocked in a momentary bafflement. Lin Jing, in his hands, held the great dream ancient mirror, the object he feared the most, and it was emitting a hazy green light, clearly already activated. The elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect quickly recovered from his daze and exclaimed to Lin Jing, "How did you suddenly appear here? And that spatial treasure of yours, what exactly is it, and how can it disregard my divine skills?" In the elder's questioning, there was also confusion, obviously perplexed by Lin Jing's sudden appearance. However, the response did not come from Lin Jing, but from the great dream ancient mirror, which Lin Jing had prepared in advance. Under Lin Jing's control, the great dream ancient mirror emitted a beam of light that instantly enveloped the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect. And as the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect was enveloped by the light from the great dream ancient mirror, he entered into a dream state once more while still cloaked in bewilderment. Seeing the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect enter the dream again, Lin Jing did not linger any longer and re-entered the system space. Although the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect was not lightly wounded, Lin Jing wasn't much better off. Using the Great Dream Ancient Mirror twice in a row had cost Lin Jing a great deal, especially since activating the Great Dream Ancient Mirror forcefully required a prior infusion of Essence Blood. This method, if used once in a short period, would be manageable, but twice, and it would be somewhat unbearable. Therefore, after entering the system's space, Lin Jing immediately began to meditate and adjust his breath. Earlier, seeing the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect about to escape, Lin Jing was too hasty, so he promptly activated the Great Dream Ancient Mirror by force. To pour in the essence blood, Lin Jing did not hold back at all, and now his chest still pained him as if on fire. Lin Jing circulated his cultivation technique, allowing his spiritual power to course through his body, and in just a short while, the pain in his chest had eased considerably. Barely improved, Lin Jing immediately ended his meditation and then summoned the system once more to activate observation mode. When Lin Jing reappeared in observation mode, he once again saw the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect. He had not managed to escape, but was now fighting against those two Yin spirits. Perhaps because the mountain had been leveled, the red light in the eyes of those two divinity transformation Yin spirits was even more intense, and their attacks were incredibly fierce, roaring continuously as they launched assaults on the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Already seriously injured, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect found it extremely difficult to defend against the two Yin spirits that were no less powerful than him and in a frenzied state. In just a short time, his injuries worsened, and the red demonic chi on his body also became extremely faint. When the two divinity transformation Yin spirits approached again, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect burst forth with energy, scattering his remaining demonic chi and managing to momentarily repulse the two Yin spirits. After repelling them, the aura of his cultivation on the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect plummeted, and, as if he had exhausted his cultivation, he could no longer hover in mid-air and fell to the ground. Upon landing, the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect propped himself up with a Ling Yin flawless sword and managed to stand with difficulty. He then lifted his head and looked towards the two divinity transformation Yin spirits, his eyes filled with despair. I can't believe that after living for 1,000 years, I would ultimately fall to the hands of a young whippersnapper. Damn Lin Jing. I hate this. At that moment, the two divinity transformation Yin spirits charged down again, heading straight for the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. After the two divinity transformation Yin spirits rushed over, they immediately entangled the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor, whose eyes swiftly shifted from despair to a piercing sharpness. Following that, the aura of the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor changed again, as the aura of his cultivation soared instantly, even stronger than before he was injured. The demonic chi emanating from his body was also unprecedentedly powerful. Just as the two divinity transformation Yin spirits pounced, the demonic chi around the sect ancestor of Nanming surged vastly, like tendrils, wrapping around the two Yin spirits. Although the two divinity transformation Yin spirits were incredibly formidable, they were restrained by the tendrils of demonic chi, unable to move. Next, all over the Nanming Immortal Sect ancestor's body, the demonic chi soared, turning a dark red, and then the dark red demonic chi started to burn from the ends. The flames were ink black, appearing utterly terrifying. The two divinity transformation Yin spirits, first to come in contact with the black flames, were scorched by them and immediately let out piercing, miserable wails. Gradually, the black flames spread, consuming even the body of the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor, igniting him as well. Lin Jing looked at the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. At this time, he was clenching his teeth, ceaselessly driving the demonic chi in his body to envelop the two divinity transformation Yin spirits with the black flames. Some of the flames had already latched onto him, melting his flesh to reveal the stark white bones underneath. Yet, he seemed oblivious, staring at the two divinity transformation Yin spirits, ignoring the flames consuming his own body. Was the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor planning to escape the predicament with this method of damaging the enemy by 1,000 and self-harming by 800? Lin Jing wasn't sure. Not until a good while later, when one of the divinity transformation spirits could no longer endure and dissipated under the burning of the black flames. Only the other one was still struggling desperately, though it seemed about to give in as well. However, at this moment, the demonic chi on the Nanming Immortal Sect's Ancestor had already burned away to nothing, and the black flames slowly extinguished. The remaining divinity transformation spirit, freed from the constraints of the demonic chi, surged out again. The spirit that burst forth appeared extremely weak, with its body almost transparent. But the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was in even worse shape. For now, the aura on the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect was barely perceptible. With the inability to stand, he collapsed to the ground. The Ling flawless sword was even crushed underneath him. Having failed to incinerate both spirits, the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor completely despaired. The remaining divinity transformation spirit, now with bloodshot eyes, furiously charged towards the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor. As the divinity transformation spirit charged, it coiled around the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect like seeking vengeance, then opened its vast maw to devour his essence blood. The Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor wished to resist, but he was powerless, only able to watch the divinity transformation spirit swallow all his essence blood. Before long, the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor was drained of all his essence blood, turning into a mummified corpse. Even in death, the eyes of the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect remained wide open, as if refusing to close them. After draining the Nanming Immortal Sect ancestor, the divinity transformation spirit did not immediately return, but circled the area several times instead. Not until it confirmed that the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor no longer had any signs of life did it return to the cave. After the divinity transformation spirit had left, Lin Jing did not hurry to exit the system space. Instead, within the system space, he continued to observe the mummified corpse of the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor, now lying on the ground, shriveled and motionless, with wide-open eyes. This topmost powerhouse of the Nanming domain had just perished before his eyes, making Lin Jing feel as if it was a surreal, somewhat unreal experience. But the lying mummy proved that it all was real. The ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect indeed had perished. Lin Jing observed the mummified corpse of the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect for a while, then controlled the observation mode to scan the entire mountain. The mountain, devoid of the former encampments, was still bustling with activity. The spirits that were annihilated by the explosion of the ancient bronze bell had been resurrected and continued to roam the mountaintop. In the cave, the divinity transformation spirit that had devoured the essence blood of the Nanming Immortal Sect's ancestor was sitting in meditation, and at the place of its sea of consciousness, the clump of cyan light became slightly brighter. After probing for a while, Lin Jing again controlled the observation mode to return to the site of the Nanming Immortal Sect ancestor's death, keeping an eye on every movement there. Since Yunling could be resurrected after his death, then the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, who also cultivated demonic techniques, could he perhaps use a feigned death strategy to escape certain doom? Lin Jing wasn't very clear on this, but couldn't let his guard down either. So, Lin Jing didn't leave the system space, standing guard at the place of the Nanming Immortal Sect ancestor's corpse. Lin Jing stood watch for 3 days, and that was 3 days in the outside world. If calculated in system space-time, Lin Jing had spent 21 days inside. During this time, Lin Jing mostly used observation mode to guard the ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Only a small portion of time was used for sitting in meditation to recover. However, as the 3 days passed, no abnormalities occurred. Sometimes, aimlessly wandering spirits even drifted around the area of the Nanming Immortal Sect ancestor. The spirits remained unresponsive. After 3 days, Lin Jing felt it was about enough. But just to be on the safe side, Lin Jing still didn't leave. In the following days, instead of constantly watching the old ancestors of the Nanming Immortal Sect, Lin Jing meditated and continued the refinement of the great dream ancient mirror inside the system space, only occasionally using observation mode to check on the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Just like that, another 7 days had passed. By now, Lin Jing had spent 10 days inside the system space. During these 10 days, the corpse of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect outside had still shown no response. But Lin Jing had no choice but to go out now. Because the remaining time in the system space was less than 100 hours, and there had been no movement for so long, it was assumed that the old ancestor of Nanming Immortal Sect must indeed be dead. Furthermore, there wasn't much time left in his system space, and there was no point in continuing to wait. After observing the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect one more time and finding no abnormalities, Lin Jing left the system space. Upon leaving the system space, Lin Jing wasn't far from where the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect had died. Next, Lin Jing carefully approached the body of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Lin Jing extended his spiritual sense, scanning the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. The body of the old ancestor was withered. All blood in his body had long been drained, with only some dried blood stains on the ground beneath him. Although he had become a mummy, the Ling Jing flawless sword was still lying underneath him. Lin Jing then gestured, and the Ling Jing flawless sword, upon being summoned, immediately stirred and shot towards Lin Jing. As the Ling Jing flawless sword moved, the corpse of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, as if it had been decaying for years, immediately crumbled upon touch. The Ling Jing flawless sword flew back into Lin Jing's hand, and simultaneously, the decayed flesh of the old ancestor was stirred up. Normally, Lin Jing wouldn't have cared, but within this flesh, a small inconspicuous piece charged directly at Lin Jing. Lin Jing instantly became alert. However, just as Lin Jing became alert, a powerful spiritual sense attack rushed into his mind, and Lin Jing instantly lost control of his body. Lin Jing quickly concentrated his spiritual sense to defend. While Lin Jing was defending against the spiritual sense attack and unable to move, the inconspicuous piece of flesh split open, revealing a blood-red sphere formed like condensed essence blood. Seizing the moment, it directly plunged into Lin Jing's dantian. Upon entering the dantian, the blood-red sphere immediately disintegrated into red demonic qi, spreading throughout Lin Jing's meridians. As the demonic qi dispersed, the burst sight of the blood-red sphere revealed a purple nascent soul inside, not even half an inch large. Upon its emergence, it immediately rushed toward the center of the dantian, straight into Lin Jing's own nascent soul. At this time, Lin Jing was fully resisting the sudden attack of the spiritual sense, and simply couldn't react fast enough. After rushing into the dantian, the blood-red nascent soul went directly into Lin Jing's own purple nascent soul, merging with it. Just then, that powerful spiritual sense suddenly scattered, and Lin Jing's spiritual sense finally gained the upper hand, regaining control of his body. And that dispersed spiritual sense also transmitted a message at this moment. Haha, the Blood Infant Pact is complete. Lin Jing, your death is certain. This spiritual sense was indeed the old ancestors of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Just wait. When the Blood Infant fully matures and you completely become a demon cultivator, that will be the day my spiritual sense awakens and replaces you. At that time, whether it is that spatial treasure or your Taoist treasure mirror, all will be mine. Haha. In Lin Jing's sea of consciousness, that laughing voice grew weaker, and the old ancestor's spiritual sense from the Nanming Immortal Sect dispersed directly. Lin Jing frowned suddenly, surprised that despite all his precautions, he still couldn't guard against this old ancestor from the Nanming Immortal Sect. As a sect ancestor who had lived for over 1,000 years, this person was indeed not to be underestimated. Next, Lin Jing found his body beginning to undergo changes. The previously dispersed demonic qi automatically circulating within his body. And as this demonic qi circulated, it also devoured his spiritual power, growing stronger itself. Recalling the last words of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, Lin Jing quickly extended his spiritual sense into his own body. He saw that the demonic qi inside him was still circulating, gathering towards the nascent soul in his dantian. The blood-colored nascent soul that had entered his own nascent soul was also absorbing the demonic qi during its accumulation, growing stronger. Apparently, this blood-colored nascent soul needed that demonic qi to grow. At this point, the blood-colored nascent soul was only less than half an inch in size, while Lin Jing's own nascent soul was over 2 inches. From the last words spoken by the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect, it wasn't hard to guess that once this blood infant grew, Lin Jing would be possessed by the old ancestor of the Nanming Sect. To be possessed? Over his dead body. Considering the current circumstances, he still needed to eradicate the residual soul of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect inside his body. With the system space available, Lin Jing wasn't panicked. Next, Lin Jing put away the old ancestor's space ring of the Nanming Immortal Sect, then summoned the system and entered the system space. Ordinarily, Lin Jing had expected a system warning to sound upon entry. Contrary to expectations, when Lin Jing returned to the system space, the system remained completely unresponsive, and the demonic qi inside him was still automatically circulating. Lin Jing was instantly dumbfounded. What's going on? There's no system warning. Could it be that the residual soul of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect has already dissipated? Lin Jing did not quite understand. If one wanted to possess his body, they definitely needed a soul spirit. Without a soul spirit, naturally, possession was impossible. Yet at the moment, the system alarm had not gone off. Could it be that the soul spirit of the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect has really completely dissipated? Lin Jing was very puzzled. However, the words of the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect before made him have to be more vigilant. Previously, the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect mentioned something about a blood infant pact, and this pact must be related to the demonic techniques he practiced. Maybe by understanding those techniques, I could find a solution. Thinking of this, Lin Jing took out the space ring that belonged to the ancestor of Nanming Immortal Sect, ready to investigate. However, this space ring had restrictions. He had to break the restrictions before Lin Jing could open it. Breaking the restrictions more effectively required stronger divine sense, and the alchemy room was just the right place. Following that, Lin Jing hurriedly walked to the alchemy room. Upon arriving in the alchemy room, Lin Jing did not dare to delay and immediately sat down cross-legged to start breaking the restrictions on the space ring. While Lin Jing was breaking the restrictions, the demonic qi kept circulating, devouring his spiritual power and transforming it into demonic qi for the blood-colored nascent soul to absorb. With no choice, Lin Jing could only divert some of his spiritual power to suppress the demonic qi while pouring more of his mind into focusing intently on breaking the restrictions. Just like that, 3 days passed in a flash. During these 3 days, Lin Jing tried to break the restrictions on the space ring of the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect, while also suppressing the demonic qi inside his body. This made him very exhausted. Though exhausted, the outcome was always good. Thus, after 3 days, Lin Jing finally broke the seal on the space ring of the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect. Upon breaking the seal, Lin Jing could not wait and immediately probed into the ring. The contents inside the space ring of the ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect were not many. As the head of a sect, there was no need to carry many resources on oneself. If there were any needs, the entire sect would find ways to fulfill them. Though there weren't many items inside, all of them were extremely precious. Lin Jing briefly scanned the contents. Superior grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit plants, and some rare artifact refining materials were just piled up inside the space ring. However, Lin Jing was not in the mood to care about these items right now. His target was that demonic technique. Lin Jing scanned around, and finally, in a corner of the space ring, he found that blood-red jade slip. The words blood spirit demonic technique were prominently inscribed on it. This must be the cultivation technique that Lin Jing was looking for. Without any hesitation, Lin Jing took out the technique right away. Following that, Lin Jing let his divine sense enter it. After flipping through it for a while, Lin Jing confirmed. This was indeed the demonic technique that the Ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect practiced. Lin Jing quickly looked further, and finally at the end, he found a spell named Blood Spirit Contract. Lin Jing then carefully started reading it. Only after a good while did Lin Jing finish observing it and withdrew his divine sense. Up to now, Lin Jing had gained a certain understanding of the Blood Spirit Contract. The Blood Spirit Contract was an extremely sinister spell, a last-ditch survival strategy against an opponent when cornered. When facing desperation, the caster would melt their own cultivation, soul spirit, and all insights, transforming them into a demon elixir. This demon elixir was peculiar. When another cultivator approached, it would autonomously select a host, merge into the host's body, and condense into a blood-colored demon infant within. Upon occupying the cultivator's body, this blood-colored demon infant could autonomously cultivate and grow. If this demon infant eventually matured, it would start devouring the host's own nascent soul. If it completed the devouring, the soul spirit of the caster would revive. Through this process, the caster could also control the body of the host, achieving revival from death. However, the reason why this blood infant pact was referred to as a pact was that it was not absolutely beneficial for the caster, but also had an advantageous aspect for the host. If the host suppresses the demon infant within and refines it, then the caster would completely dissipate, welcoming true death. At the same time, all of the caster's previous cultivation and insights would be absorbed by the host, serving as an aid to the host's cultivation. The success rate of the Blood Infant Pact was actually not very high. It was even less than 10%, a desperate act when there were no other choices. Only in desperate situations would it be used. The Ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect also decided to take the risk because he was trapped in a desperate situation. And he's successful. Moreover, it happened just when Lin Jing took away his Ling Yin flawless sword. The demon elixir erupted and entered Lin Jing's body. Lin Jing had no system warning when entering the system space because, one could say, the Ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect was already dead. The demon infant at this time also lacked any consciousness. Only when the demon infant fully matured would the consciousness of the Ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect completely revive. Having fully understood the Blood Infant Pact, Lin Jing couldn't help but furrow his brow. He had not anticipated that such a cultivation technique existed in the world. Continuing, Lin Jing withdrew his divine sense and then probed into his own body, looking at the nascent soul within. In his dantian, his purple nascent soul was sitting cross-legged, while the demon infant was rooted inside his nascent soul. Over the 3 days spent deciphering the cultivation technique, Lin Jing noticed that the demon infant had grown a bit since its inception, now about half an inch in size. Previously, in order to decipher the space ring of the Elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect, he had expended too much energy. As a result, he was unable to suppress the demon infant, allowing it to grow a bit. He hadn't expected the demon infant to grow so quickly. In just 3 days, it had undergone such changes. If it continued at this pace, he estimated that in less than a year, the demon infant would fully mature. Once the demon infant matured, the consequences would be unpredictable. Lin Jing dared not delay. He once again activated his divine sense and probed the jade slip of demonic techniques, trying to find another solution. Soon, Lin Jing had read all the contents inside the jade slip. This Blood Infant Pact, however, only detailed methods of usage and contained no solution for dissolution. It seemed that suppression was the only option. Continuing, Lin Jing's divine sense withdrew from the jade slip and once again probed into the space ring of the elder of the Nanming Immortal Sect. Inside the space ring were several more jade slips and some books. Lin Jing decided to look through them. More than 2 hours later, he had gone through all the jade slips and books inside the elder space ring at the Nanming Immortal Sect. Yet he found nothing. Having completely gone through everything, Lin Jing found no solution to the blood infant and reluctantly withdrew. After exiting, Lin Jing decided to try using his own methods to see if he could expel the demonic qi. This time, Lin Jing had been busy for half a day. However, it was of no use. Half a day later, Lin Jing, feeling the demonic qi in his body that had grown stronger, along with the demon infant, which was absorbing the demonic qi and growing itself, fell into silence. Just now, Lin Jing had run his cultivation technique, consolidated his spiritual power around the nascent soul, isolating that demonic qi. Nevertheless, that demonic qi was not ordinary. As the demonic qi neared his spiritual power, it continually corrupted the spiritual power, quickly turning it into new demonic qi. The demonic qi was indeed domineering. Not only that, Lin Jing had also tried using the 5 elements power, but whenever the demonic qi encountered the 5 elements power, it dispersed and hid in various corners of his body. As soon as the 5 elements power dispersed, the demonic qi would recongregate. Of course, using the 5 elements power was not completely ineffective. It still had some effect. Lin Jing's divine sense, coupled with the 5 elements power, managed to eliminate some of the demonic qi. Unfortunately, most of it escaped, and moreover, using the 5 elements power was quite draining. It wouldn't be long before Lin Jing would have to stop. Originally, the 5 elements power was an offensive technique and quite taxing on the mind. Inside his own body, Lin Jing had to be extremely cautious. Therefore, it simply couldn't be used for extended periods. In the end, with no other options, Lin Jing could only continue using spiritual power to suppress it temporarily. However, luckily, as long as he didn't use spiritual power and fully focused on suppression, the demon infant was almost unable to absorb demonic qi and hence couldn't continue to grow. Now, with this demon infant inside his body and temporarily no solution, he had no choice but to leave it as it was. There was another matter now that was also very important. That was, Lin Jing needed to leave the Barren Forbidden Zone as soon as possible. In this Barren Forbidden Zone, lifespan was reduced for no apparent reason. If he stayed too long, it could be disastrous. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Then, Lin Jing first extended his divine sense to check the surroundings outside. After checking and seeing no danger, he left the system space. Once outside the system space, Lin Jing directly stepped onto the Ling Yin flawless sword and flew out of the Barren Forbidden Zone. Having entered the Barren Forbidden Zone, it took Lin Jing a month, but upon his exit, it had cost him more than 2 months. Unable to help it, Lin Jing needed to use most of his cultivation to suppress the demon infant, so his speed was considerably slower. Leaving the Barren Forbidden Zone, Lin Jing finally breathed a sigh of relief. Inside the Barren Forbidden Zone, his lifespan continually decreased, which made staying there any longer unthinkable for Lin Jing. Had it not been for the existence of the demon infant, Lin Jing would have disregarded everything and focused on leaving the Barren Forbidden Zone much earlier. At this moment, below Lin Jing lay a scarcely frequented mountain forest. Being close to the edge of the Barren Forbidden Zone, let alone people, even demonic beasts were extremely rare. Afterwards, Lin Jing directly retracted the Ling Yin flawless sword and descended into the forest. As soon as he stabilized his form, Lin Jing eagerly entered the system space to check his lifespan. At that moment, the system panel glaringly displayed his information. Lin Jing, 77/990. In the time since leaving the Barren Forbidden Zone, Lin Jing had lost another 7 years of his life. And yet, he had actually only spent a little over 3 months inside the Barren Forbidden Zone. That meant for every month spent in the Barren Forbidden Zone, he would lose 3 years of life. The Barren Forbidden Zone was indeed peculiar. After checking, Lin Jing didn't linger in the system space and appeared outside immediately. After coming out, Lin Jing directly found a large boulder and sat down cross-legged. Continuing, he again extended his divine sense into his own body. At this moment, inside Lin Jing's body, the demonic qi still existed. And inside Lin Jing's nascent soul, the blood infant had also grown a bit more, now exceeding half an inch. Although Lin Jing had been suppressing it with all his might, as soon as he used the spiritual power within his body, there would inevitably be oversights, allowing it to absorb demonic qi and continue to grow. This was a discovery Lin Jing had made during this time. Looking at the demon infant that had grown a bit, Lin Jing knew that for the next period, he had to avoid using spiritual power as much as possible. This meant that he would seal his own cultivation, using it all to resist the demon infant. Fortunately, now that he had left the barren forbidden zone and there was no need to hurry on the road, not using spiritual power didn't matter much. Moreover, he was a body refinement cultivator with considerable strength. Even if he didn't use spiritual power at all, it wouldn't be a problem. Having thought this, Lin Jing subsequently hid all his cultivation and then left the place. Yunling Town was a remote mortal town near the barren forbidden zone. Due to its remote location and extremely thin spiritual energy, very few cultivators visited Yunling Town. Even if a cultivator passed by, they would leave quickly. They seldom stayed longer. For those high-up cultivators, this was just an ordinary mortal town, no different from ants, hardly worth noting. After leaving the barren forbidden zone, Lin Jing sealed his own cultivation and didn't use any spiritual power as he walked through the mountains and forests. Thus, Lin Jing walked for several days. The variety of animals and insects in the forest gradually increased. Even demonic beasts occasionally appeared. Just as he was about to leave the forest, Lin Jing suddenly heard a roar. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." The roar was somewhat immature, and by the sound of it, it was likely a young boy. Driven by curiosity, Lin Jing headed in the direction of the sound. As Lin Jing approached, he understood what had happened. In front of him, two green wolves were surrounding a boy about 16 or 17 years old. The boy was disheveled and covered in traces of blood. In his hands, he held a wooden stick over a meter long, confronting the two green wolves. The boy was injured, but his eyes were fierce as he stared down the wolves, the wooden stick tightly gripped in his hands, shielded in front of him. However, Lin Jing could see from his trembling legs that although he appeared fierce, he was actually very scared. The two green wolves weren't deterred by his demeanor and were salivating, crouching, closely watching the boy. It seemed that they could attack at any moment. At that moment, Lin Jing arrived. Green wolves, with much keener hearing and sense of smell than humans, became alert as soon as Lin Jing arrived. Upon seeing Lin Jing, the two green wolves immediately bared their teeth with a fierce look. These two green wolves were not demonic beasts, just ordinary wild animals. Lin Jing didn't care and continued walking forward. Lin Jing had already sealed his cultivation, including hiding his own aura. At this moment, Lin Jing appeared no different from a mortal, perhaps due to living in the wild and being naturally alert to danger. Upon seeing Lin Jing, the two green wolves did not dare attack directly. Instead, they bared their teeth, showing hostility while backing away. Meanwhile, the boy stood there, completely stunned. As Lin Jing gradually approached, the wolves could no longer bear it. They howled and ran away with their tails between their legs. After the two green wolves fled, Lin Jing glanced at the boy and then turned to leave. However, at that moment, the boy hurriedly called out to Lin Jing, "This, sir, thank you, big brother, for saving my life." Lin Jing looked back at him and replied, "You're injured and the smell of blood lingers. It's best to leave quickly. Otherwise, it's easy to attract other wild animals." With that, Lin Jing simply turned and left. The boy wanted to say something, but realized that Lin Jing had already disappeared. He suddenly understood that he had encountered an immortal. He looked in the direction Lin Jing had left, his eyes filled with reverence. For Lin Jing, this was just a small event, and he didn't dwell on it. He continued on his way and soon left the dense forest. After exiting the forest, Lin Jing saw the first human town he came across. Since he was passing by, he certainly wanted to take a look and gather some information. It had been 4 months since the ancestor of Nanming Immortal Sect had chased him. Lin Jing wondered if there had been any news from the Nanming Immortal Sect about their ancestor's death. Then, Lin Jing headed towards the town. This town was called Yunling Town. Lin Jing only realized after arriving that this was merely a mortal town. In this mortal town, there were no cultivators at all, and without any cultivators, Lin Jing naturally couldn't gather any information. Subsequently, Lin Jing took a stroll around the town and then planned to leave. But just at that moment, Lin Jing unexpectedly encountered that young man again. The young man, seeing Lin Jing, was very excited. "Immortal, I didn't expect you to be here." Lin Jing nodded and casually said, "Just wandering around." The young man continued, "Immortal, my home is in Yunling Town. Why don't you come back with me? I would properly host you as a way to repay you for saving my life." Lin Jing intended to refuse, but seeing the sincerity in the young man's eyes, he eventually nodded. "All right." The young man immediately became excited. "Immortal, please follow me." Speaking, the young man led the way in front, guiding Lin Jing deeper into the town. Along the way, the young man told Lin Jing a lot. Lin Jing also learned that this young man was named Shan, and he always lived with his grandfather. The two of them continued through the town to its outskirts. "Immortal, my grandfather likes being alone and dislikes bustling places, so he took me to live on the mountain outside the town." Speaking, Shan pointed directly to a house on the slope. "That one." Lin Jing nodded. Then, the two of them walked up toward the slope. Just as they ascended, an old man with white hair and beard came out from the house. Seeing the elder, Shan hurriedly ran over. "Grandfather, I'm back." The elder glanced at Shan and then spoke. "Have you been mischievous again? Look at you, you're injured again." After speaking, he took out a porcelain bottle from his robe and handed it to Shan, adding, "Apply the medicine yourself later." Shan took the porcelain bottle, nodding repeatedly. Then, he introduced Lin Jing. "Grandfather, this immortal is my life-saving benefactor. Today, when I was in the mountains, I was attacked by green wolves. If not for this immortal's rescue, I might not have been able to see you again." After finishing, Shan then introduced to Lin Jing. "Immortal, this is my grandfather." Shan's grandfather looked at Lin Jing, sized him up for a while, then said to Shan, "Go. You go inside and apply the medicine yourself." Shan nodded, informed Lin Jing with a nod, and then went into the house. At this moment, only Lin Jing and Shan's grandfather were left outside. It was then that a divine sense message transmitted into Lin Jing's sea of consciousness. "Fellow Taoist, I see that you're enveloped in dense demonic qi, but you don't seem like a demon cultivator. May I inquire the reason for this?" Lin Jing was startled and hastily started scrutinizing Shan's grandfather opposite him. However, to Lin Jing's shock, no matter how he looked, this Shan's grandfather appeared to be immortal without any cultivation. Clearly, this man had also hidden his cultivation. As Lin Jing was puzzled, that divine sense message came again. "Fellow Taoist, don't be surprised. My cultivation is much higher than yours, so you cannot discern my cultivation level." After hearing this, Lin Jing then reacted, cupped his hands, and transmitted back to Shan's grandfather. "So, it turns out you are a senior. My apologies." The elder waved his hand and then transmitted a message. "No need for such formalities." Just at that moment, Shan's voice came from inside the house. "Grandpa, I have a wound on my back that I can't reach. Could you help me apply some medicine?" Upon hearing this, the elder replied, "Coming." Having said that, the elder once again transmitted to Lin Jing. "Shan doesn't know that I'm a cultivator. Please remember not to reveal it. As for the rest, we'll talk after Shan has gone to sleep tonight." Lin Jing nodded slightly, and then transmitted back, "Senior, please rest assured." Lin Jing had sealed his own cultivation, making his appearance seem no different from that of an ordinary person. Yet the elder was able to clearly sense the demonic qi within him. Moreover, in Lin Jing's eyes, the elder seemed to be just an ordinary old man without any cultivation, and even when Lin Jing extended his divine sense, he couldn't detect the elder's cultivation. It seemed the elder's cultivation was much higher than his own. It was just unknown why such a powerful cultivator would choose to live in seclusion here. Afterwards, Lin Jing followed the elder into the house. Upon arriving inside, Shursan's grandfather went forward to apply medicine to Shursan's wounds, scolding him while doing so. Whenever you have nothing to do, you enjoy running around in the mountains. Having suffered such a loss this time, let's see if you'll remember. Meanwhile, Shursan grimaced in pain while murmuring, I went into the mountains intending to catch a wild chicken and to pick some mushrooms to nourish your body, Grandpa. Who knew I'd encounter green wolves as soon as I entered the mountain? Having said that, Shursan turned his head back and complained discontentedly. I'm injured, and all you do is scold me without showing any concern. After hearing this, Shursan's grandfather slapped him on the back, and the ointment was instantly absorbed into Shursan's wound with the slap. Shursan immediately cried out, ow, arching his body in pain. Grandpa, be gentle. Shursan turned his head, grinning painfully. Shursan's grandfather looked displeased as he replied, one day, when you'll settle down and let me have some peace of mind, that will be better than anything. Their bickering was no different from that of ordinary people. But who could imagine that the unassuming-looking elder was actually a cultivator with profound and unfathomable cultivation? Having just finished applying the medicine, Shursan quickly became energetic again. Then, he came to Lin Jing and said, Immortal, don't mind it. Grandpa and I are always like this. Lin Jing shook his head, then smilingly spoke. There's no need to call me Immortal anymore. My surname is Lin. You can just call me Uncle Lin. Considering that Shursan's grandfather had much higher cultivation than him, Lin Jing naturally did not dare to put on airs in front of them. Shursan nodded repeatedly in agreement. Then, Shursan glanced at the sky outside and then said to Lin Jing, Uncle Lin, it's getting late. You talk with Grandpa for a while, and I'll go cook for you. My cooking skills are quite good. Uncle Lin, you must try it later. As he said this, Shursan seemed to suddenly remember something and stopped abruptly, then awkwardly asked Lin Jing, Sorry, Uncle Lin, I just remembered there's a rumor in town that you immortals subsist on collecting mist and drinking dew. Is it true that you don't eat meals? Lin Jing responded, We cultivators can certainly fast, but it does not prevent us from eating. Eating is still possible. So that's the case. Shursan immediately became happy. All right, please wait a moment, Uncle Lin. I'll go cook right now. This remote little town rarely saw cultivators come by, but Shursan was quite relaxed with Lin Jing, a cultivator showing no restraint at all. Lin Jing believed others would definitely not be able to behave as naturally as Shursan did. However, his grandfather was a cultivator of exceptional strength, so it was likely that Shursan's grandfather had also imparted some teachings to him. Having said that, Shursan left the house and went into the courtyard where there was a shed that was their kitchen. Arriving at the kitchen, Shursan immediately began to busily and skillfully cook. Lin Jing then turned to look at Shursan's grandfather. However, Shursan's grandfather was unhurriedly tidying up the house. At the moment, he truly appeared just like an elderly man in the secular world. While tidying up and talking with Lin Jing, he said, Shursan, the poor child. In the 10th month of his pregnancy, his parents were ambushed by a hostile power and both were killed. He had just been born at that time. Unfortunately, by the time I arrived, it was already too late. Not only was I unable to save his parents, Shursan too had sadly perished. It was by using the heaven-deceiving secret art that I managed to revive him. Shursan's grandfather narrated Shursan's experiences in a calm tone, but to Lin Jing, listening was profoundly shocking. And that is why Shursan cannot practice cultivation in this life, as much as the child longs to follow the path of cultivation. Even I cannot change that. Shursan's grandfather continued. Lin Jing listened attentively, occasionally turning his head to look at Sher San outside the house. At that moment, it seemed as though Sher San wasn't aware of anything and continued with his work. The reason I'm here is partly because of Sher San's body issues. Also, another reason is, since he can't embark on the path of cultivation, then I'll accompany him for the rest of his life. Lin Jing listened in silence for a moment. Senior, just as Lin Jing began to speak, Sher San's grandfather interrupted him. The reason I'm telling you all this is actually because I have a favor to ask of you. Lin Jing was startled, then asked in confusion. Senior, may I know what you need help with? Lin Jing was puzzled. Given Grandpa Sher San's level of cultivation, there were few things he couldn't do. Why would he need his help? Grandpa Sher San then spoke up, saying, I understand what the boy is thinking. He longs for the world of cultivation. I want you to be his temporary mentor. Since he can't cultivate, you don't have to worry about that. Just take him around to see the world. Even if he can't cultivate, I don't want him to spend his life just staying in this place. After hearing this, Lin Jing looked doubtfully at Grandpa Sher San and asked, What about you, Senior? Grandpa Sher San sighed and said, Naturally, I still have other matters to attend to. Lin Jing nodded upon hearing this and replied, All right. Grandpa Sher San gave a slight nod and then continued. Your willingness to save Sher San shows that you have a decent nature. But I notice a strong demonic chi within you, which is at odds with your own aura. I suspect you must have encountered a demon cultivator or have been plotted against by one, right? Lin Jing nodded and said, Senior is perceptive. Previously, I did indeed fight with a demon cultivator, and after cleverly defeating him, I accidentally fell victim to his demonic techniques. Grandpa Sher San looked up at Lin Jing, his gaze piercing as if seeing right through him. After a while, Grandpa Sher San spoke again. All right, I'll help you check it out when the time comes. Lin Jing bowed and said, Thank you, Senior. And Grandpa Sher San, in turn, waved his hand. It seemed that Sher San cooked frequently. In less than an hour, he had prepared several dishes. Next, the dishes were served, and everyone gathered around the table and began to eat heartily. And Sher San was particularly attentive. Uncle Lin, this is the wild chicken I caught yesterday. Try it, please. Lin Jing nodded, then picked up a piece of the wild chicken and tasted it. The wild chicken was tender, smooth, and delectable, and with Sher San's fairly good cooking skills, Lin Jing, who hadn't eaten mortal food for a long time, had a unique experience. Uncle Lin, how is it? Sher San looked at Lin Jing with expectant eyes. Lin Jing nodded and responded, Not bad. Sher San instantly became joyful. Next, Sher San looked at Lin Jing and cautiously asked, Uncle Lin, I heard from Grandpa that cultivators need a spiritual root to cultivate, and without it, one cannot cultivate. Is that right? Lin Jing put down his chopsticks and looked at Sher San, saying, That's correct, it is so. Then Sher San continued to ask, Then Uncle Lin, can you see if I have a spiritual root? Grandpa said before that I don't have a spiritual root, so I can't cultivate. At this point, Grandpa Sher San interjected. What? You don't even believe your grandpa? Sher San retorted. Grandpa, you're not a cultivator. Your word doesn't count. Let's wait and see after Uncle Lin checks. It seemed truly as Grandpa Sher San said. Sher San longed for the world of cultivation. It didn't take more than a few exchanges before his little intrigue was fully exposed. Seeing this, Lin Jing spoke up to Sher San. Stretch out your hand, and I'll take a look for you. Upon hearing this, Sher San's eyes lit up, and he quickly extended his hand, looking expectantly at Lin Jing. Then Lin Jing reached out, resting his hand on Sher San's wrist, and sent his divine sense into it. Since Lin Jing was using his divine sense instead of spiritual power, it wasn't so troublesome. A simple sweep with the divine sense, and Sher San's physical condition was laid bare before Lin Jing's sight. Sher San indeed did not possess a spiritual root, and his dantian was different from others. At his dantian, there always lurked an odd force. This force felt somewhat familiar to Lin Jing, as if he had sensed it in the barren, forbidden zone, but he was not too sure. Beyond that, he was no different from the average person. Having investigated, Lin Jing wore a contemplative look before withdrawing his hand. Seeing Lin Jing's expression was not too positive, San heart inevitably skipped a beat. Then, San carefully spoke up, asking Lin Jing, "Uncle Lin, how is it? Do I have a spiritual root?" Lin Jing looked at San's cautious, yet hopeful gaze, and then shook his head. Seeing Lin Jing shake his head, San's last shred of hope dissipated. His eyes, which previously held hope, turned to complete despair. Upon seeing San's disappointment, Grandpa, Shan, then spoke up to comfort him. "I've told you before, but you wouldn't believe it. But even if you don't have a spiritual root, so what? There are so many people in town, most of them don't have one either, and they still live well. Since you can't cultivate, just live honestly as a normal person and lead a good life. The life of a cultivator may involve living thousands, tens of thousands of years more. But although we have limited lifespans, we too can live brilliantly and be our true selves. Besides, the cultivation world isn't necessarily as good as you think." Hearing his grandfather's words, San finally looked up. Then, taking a deep breath, he turned to his grandfather and said, "Grandpa, I understand." Following that, San seemed to let go of his concerns and became lively again, even occasionally asking about the cultivation world. And Lin Jing casually shared some of his own experiences. Thus, their meal lasted a long time, not ending until the sky had darkened. After dinner, the three casually chatted for a while. But in just a short time, San was overwhelmingly sleepy and went asleep first. Grandpa Shan walked over to the sleeping San, who was as still as if in a coma, and while tucking him in, he said to Lin Jing, "You must have seen the thing inside his dantian when you tested his spirit root aptitude just now, right?" Lin Jing nodded, saying, "There's a special energy in Shan's dantian, which feels somewhat similar to what's inside the Barren Forbidden Zone." Grandpa Shan nodded, then spoke. "It seems you've been to the Barren Forbidden Zone. You're right. That thing, indeed, has something to do with the Barren Forbidden Zone. The reason I am living in seclusion here with San is precisely because of that thing, for it's the only thing that can keep San alive." Lin Jing was very puzzled and promptly asked Grandpa Shan, "Elder, what exactly is that thing?" At this moment, Grandpa Shan, having finished tucking in the blanket, walked over and asked Lin Jing, "Do you have any wine on you?" Lin Jing, upon hearing this, was momentarily stunned, then realized and took out several bottles of spiritual wine from his space ring, handing them over. "Elder, I have some spiritual wine here, though I'm not sure if it's to your liking." These bottles of spiritual wine had been given to him back when he was in the little courtyard by Li Qingqing. Lin Jing would occasionally drink some when he had nothing else to do, and now he still had plenty left. Grandpa Shan smiled and said, "Spiritual wine or ordinary wine? To me, there's not much difference. It's just that I haven't had any for a long time, and I miss it." Saying so, Grandpa Shan took the spiritual wine and downed a big gulp. After a mouthful of wine, Grandpa Shan sighed contentedly and then asked Lin Jing, "Do you know how the Barren Forbidden Zone was formed?" Lin Jing nodded, saying, "I have heard some about it. It's said that an unknown substance from beyond this realm penetrated the boundary wall, crashed into the Nanming domain, causing a catastrophe that swept across the entire Nanming domain. That catastrophe resulted in over 90% of the Nanming domain being destroyed, and that ruined area is now what we call the Barren Forbidden Zone." Grandpa Shan nodded and said, "That's correct." He then turned his head to look at Lin Jing, asking, "But do you know what that unknown substance is that penetrated the boundary wall, almost completely destroying the entire Nanming domain?" Lin Jing shook his head and replied, "I don't know. I've looked through some historical records, but there's no mention of it." Grandpa Shan nodded slightly, then said, "With your cultivation, it's normal for you not to know about that thing. Let me tell you." Lin Jing, after hearing this, was extremely astonished and then looked towards Grandpa San. Grandpa San continued, "That thing, it's actually called the Samsara fruit. Upon hearing this, Lin Jing immediately showed a face full of surprise. Samsara fruit? Grandpa Sure San nodded, then said, "Correct. The Samsara fruit is an innate spiritual object born with the universe at the dawn of creation, and if nothing unexpected happens, it would generally not appear in the world. But for some reason, this Samsara fruit suddenly broke through the boundary walls and fell into the Nanming domain." Lin Jing, upon hearing this, was a bit dumbfounded, and then asked Grandpa Sure San, "Senior, if the Samsara fruit is just a spiritual object of heaven and earth, why does it have such power? Could it be that something else came down with the Samsara fruit?" Grandpa Sure San shook his head and said, "That's not very clear. 1 million years ago, the calamity that happened in the Nanming domain destroyed the entire domain, naturally drawing the attention of the entire cultivation world. At that time, the Nanming domain was nearly wiped out, and the major powers from the other 3 domains, as well as many old monsters from the demonic Qi inner sea who usually remained hidden, all set out and entered the Nanming domain for investigation. It's just a pity that so many people set out, but in the end, no one reached the core area of the calamity. There is actually no one who could enter that core area." Lin Jing, full of confusion, then asked, "Why is this so?" Grandpa Sure San looked at Lin Jing, paused for a moment, then began to speak, asking Lin Jing, "Since you've been in the Barren Forbidden Zone, you must have witnessed the scene inside, right?" Lin Jing nodded and said, "Yes. Inside the Barren Forbidden Zone, it was desolate as far as the eye could see, not a blade of grass grew, and inside there were countless Een spirits wandering around, and these Een spirits could not be killed. Even if you kill them, they would revive very quickly." Grandpa Sure San nodded and continued, "There's another point you haven't mentioned. Inside the Barren Forbidden Zone, one's lifespan continually diminishes, and at a much faster rate than outside, at least several times or even dozens of times faster." Lin Jing nodded repeatedly after hearing this. "Yes, it was only after entering for quite some time that I became aware of it, as if something inside was incessantly stealing my own vitality." By saying this, Lin Jing concealed the fact that he could see his own lifespan through the system panel. Grandpa Sure San gently nodded and said, "That's right. Indeed it's so. There is indeed something stealing your vitality, and that something which is stealing your vitality is the Samsara fruit." Lin Jing was full of surprise. Then, Grandpa Sure San continued to speak. "When such a significant incident occurred, it can be said that almost all of the highest cultivation experts in the entire cultivation world took action. However, after the calamity, the Samsara fruit was left in the Nanming domain. The place where the Samsara fruit is located can absorb the vitality of all living beings in the area for its own growth, and the closer one gets, the faster the absorption of vitality becomes. Especially in the core area near the Samsara fruit, the speed of absorption can be said to be exceptionally frightening. Not a single person in the entire cultivation world could withstand such terrifying absorption. This is exactly why nobody could get close to the core area of the calamity. So that's how it is. No wonder." Lin Jing suddenly realized. Grandpa Sure San then continued to speak. "Furthermore, the reason why those Een spirits are indestructible is also because of the Samsara fruit. During the growth of the Samsara fruit, it releases a kind of power of reincarnation. Anyone who dies in the area of the Samsara fruit, whether cultivator or mortal, will transform into indestructible Een spirits because of this peculiar power of reincarnation. This is also exactly why those Een spirits exist within the Barren Forbidden Zone." As he said this, Grandpa Sure San glanced towards Sure San, who was lying on the bed, sound asleep, and then said, "Sure San was originally a dying man. The reason I took him to live in seclusion here is precisely because he needed the overflow of a hint of the power of reincarnation from the Samsara fruit to continue living like a normal person. Otherwise, he would have long been dead." After Lin Jing heard this, he looked towards Sure San, who was lying on the bed, fast asleep, suddenly speechless. So this was why Grandpa Sen insisted on taking San to live in seclusion here. Then, Grandpa San spoke again to Lin Jing. All right, let's set aside San's situation for now. I will first help you take a look at the demonic qi inside your body. Lin Jing nodded. I would be grateful, Senior. Then, one could see Grandpa Sen extend his hand as a transparent screen slowly unfolded from it, growing larger and larger. This screen was extremely gentle, passing through Lin Jing's body without him feeling the slightest discomfort. Suddenly, the screen enveloped the entire room and even isolated Sen separately. Having done all this, Grandpa Sen looked up with golden light shining through his eyes and gazed at Lin Jing. Lin Jing immediately felt as though he was laid bare under Grandpa San's eyes. Grandpa San first peered directly at Lin Jing's dantian, then with a slight frown, uttered a sound of surprise. How could it be a blood infant pact? Lin Jing, puzzled, quickly asked Grandpa San. Senior, are you familiar with this cultivation technique? The golden light in Grandpa San's eyes faded, and then he spoke. Familiar. This cultivation technique has quite the background, but it shouldn't appear here. Then, Grandpa San looked at Lin Jing and asked, who was the opponent you encountered this time? Lin Jing did not hide anything and directly said, the Elder Master of Nanming Immortal Sect. This cultivation technique is what he practiced. After Lin Jing finished, Grandpa San looked at Lin Jing, somewhat surprised, and said, I didn't expect it to be him. However, the fact that you forced him to resort to the Blood Infant Pact shows you are no ordinary man. Lin Jing replied humbly, Senior flatters me. In terms of strength, I'm certainly not his match. I merely took advantage of the Een spirits in the Barren Forbidden Zone. Upon hearing this, Grandfather San nodded. Then, Grandfather San continued. The Blood Infant Pact normally requires the condensation of all spiritual power for suppression to keep it under control. However, this suppression also depends on the cultivators and the recipient's level of cultivation. The Ancestor from Nanming Immortal Sect is at the divinity transformation stage while you're only at the nascent soul stage. Even if you use all your cultivation for suppression, the demon infant inside you will still slowly grow. Unless your cultivation reaches divinity transformation, even if you suppress it with all your might, you can only suppress it for a few decades at most, and that is already the limit. After speaking, Grandfather San looked at Lin Jing and said, however, you need not worry. This Blood Demon Pact is insignificant to me. I could break it with a wave of my hand, but that would be somewhat wasteful. After all, this Blood Infant contains the lifetime of cultivation insights from the Ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect. I intend to preserve it and let you slowly absorb it. How does that sound to you? Grandfather San looked at Lin Jing, waiting for his response. After thinking for a moment, Lin Jing spoke. All right, let's do as Senior suggests. Grandfather San nodded and then said to Lin Jing, there's no need to suppress the demonic qi for now, just relax. Upon hearing this, Lin Jing relaxed his suppression of the demonic qi. Then, the demonic qi within Lin Jing began to stir, and even the demon infant started to absorb the demonic qi again. Just at that moment, Grandfather San made his move. Extending his hand, a blue light appeared in his hand, and he controlled the ball of blue light, moving it towards Lin Jing. The blue light reached Lin Jing's dantian, and without any resistance, entered into it. After it entered, the demonic qi in Lin Jing's body recoiled, as if encountering a natural enemy, retreating away. Soon, the blue light passed through Lin Jing's dantian and reached the nascent soul. Upon the arrival of the blue light, it not only repelled all the surrounding demonic qi, but also subdued the demon infant again. Next, the blue light dispersed, turning into strands of blue filaments that entered the demon infant. As the blue filaments merged, the demon infant immediately released some demonic qi, trying to resist. However, it was utterly ineffective. In just a short while, the blue light had completely merged into the demon infant. Then, the demon infant turned completely blue. Next, Grandfather Sure San waved his hand again, and a ball of blue light reappeared, rushing into Lin Jing's body, dispersing all the demonic qi within him. All done. It was only then that Grandfather Sure San spoke to Lin Jing. Is that it? Lin Jing was somewhat surprised and puzzled. He hadn't expected Grandfather Sure San's intervention to be so simple and effective. Grandfather Sure San nodded and then said, "The demon infant is now sealed by me. It will no longer absorb demonic qi to grow. Just wait until it has exhausted its own demonic qi. Eventually, the demon infant will completely merge into your body, at which time you will absorb all the cultivation and insights from the elder of Nanming Immortal Sect from his lifetime. After the absorption, your cultivation will quickly improve, and you will soon break through to divinity transformation, reaching the cultivation realm the elder of Nanming Immortal Sect had in his life." Lin Jing was stunned upon hearing this. The elder of Nanming Immortal Sect had been at the 6th level of divinity transformation before. The implication from Grandfather Sure San was that by absorbing the demon infant, he could soon reach the 6th level of divinity transformation. The blood infant pact was indeed miraculous. Upon hearing this, Lin Jing promptly bowed. "Thank you, Senior." Grandfather Sure San then waved his hand and said, "I will be temporarily leaving in a while, and then it will be a trouble to you to take Sure San around to see places. Let him do whatever he wants to do. Just one thing, do not let him frequently interact with other cultivators." Lin Jing then looked again at Grandfather Sure San and asked, "Senior, when you say let Sure San follow me and leave this place, does it mean he can leave Yunling town? Without the power of reincarnation, I wonder if there will be any impact on his body." Grandfather Sure San nodded, then responded, "There's some influence, but you don't need to worry. Before leaving, I will adjust his body a bit. After the adjustment, there won't be any problems with Sure San for at least 10 years, and I will return within that time." "Good." Lin Jing nodded upon hearing this. Grandfather Sure San also nodded and then, with a softened expression, said to Lin Jing, "Then, I'll have to trouble you." Lin Jing bowed. "Senior, rest assured, I will take good care of Sure San." Afterward, Lin Jing and Grandfather Sure San continued to talk about things, until Sure San woke up again in the morning, ending their conversation. When Sure San woke up in the morning and saw Lin Jing with his grandfather, he was somewhat surprised. "Uncle Lin, have you been talking with my grandfather all night?" Grandfather Sure San said. "Don't you see what time it is? The sun has been up for a while, and you're just getting up. Haven't you been bored here in Yunling town and wanted to go out? Yesterday, I discussed with your Uncle Lin, and he agreed to take you out for some adventure and to look around different places." Upon hearing this, Sure San's eyes sparkled as he looked at Lin Jing. Lin Jing nodded. Seeing Lin Jing nod, Sure San immediately became excited. However, just as Sure San's excitement began, he suddenly remembered something and turned to his grandfather. "Grandfather, what will you do if I leave? Why don't you come with us?" Grandfather Sure San then spoke. "Silly boy, when I was young, I wandered more places than you can imagine, and I've grown tired of it. The idea of going out is more bothersome to me than staying here in Yunling town." Okay, Sure San couldn't help feeling a bit downcast. Although the two of them were leaving, they weren't in a hurry. Sure San still had to prepare, while Grandfather Sure San took the next few days to adjust Sure San's body. Several days later, Sure San said goodbye to his grandfather and left Yunling town with Lin Jing. Grandfather Sure San watched them leave, and after lingering for a long while, he suddenly leaped into the air and left the place. After leaving Yunling town, Sure San felt downcast for several days until they arrived at a city, where his mood gradually improved. Upon reaching the city, known as Imo City, Sure San was incredibly excited, constantly looking around. The Yunling town he lived in was also a town, but it didn't have a large population. It certainly wasn't as bustling as Imo City. Imo City, although just a town, was much better compared to Yunling town. Moreover, The spiritual energy in Mo City was much denser than in Yunling town. Accordingly, there were more cultivators in this town. And the administrators of the town were cultivators, though their cultivation levels were quite low, the highest being only at the foundation establishment. Master, this Mo City is so much better than Yunling town, and it has everything for sale. Just now I saw one of the shops selling demonic beasts. Those demonic beasts looked fierce, one after another. It's hard to imagine how much effort it must take to capture them. San approached Lin Jing, excitedly saying. Even before departing, San had started addressing Lin Jing as master, at the insistence of grandfather San. Lin Jing then said, "Those demonic beasts are all low-level ones. Even you could capture them if the traps are set right." "Ah, is it that simple?" San was surprised. Lin Jing then smiled and said, "Of course. The precondition is that you're not slapped by the beasts. Otherwise, one slap could cost you your life." After hearing this, San was momentarily speechless. "I knew it wasn't that easy." Lin Jing didn't say anything, he just smiled. Then, the two of them continued forward. Before long, they passed by a tavern. Lin Jing spoke up, saying to San, "Hungry are you? Come on, let's go grab some food." San nodded repeatedly. "Yes. I've always heard the food in the city is delicious, but never got to try it. Since it's my first time out, I definitely want to have a good taste." Afterward, the two entered the tavern and sat down by a window. As soon as they sat down, a server came over to greet them, and Lin Jing ordered a few of the restaurant's signature dishes. After ordering, Lin Jing asked San, "San, do you drink alcohol?" Upon hearing this, San shook his head and said, "No, but I want to try it. I've heard people say it's good stuff, but I don't know exactly what's good about it, so I want to try." San showed a very interested expression. Lin Jing nodded, then added a pot of aged wine. The tavern was operated by mortals, and all who came to eat there were mortals too. The wine here was also brewed by the tavern itself, spicy on entry and with a strong after effect. When the dishes were served, the wine was brought out too, and San, unable to wait, poured a glass for Lin Jing. Then he poured one for himself too. Then Lin Jing raised his glass and downed it in one go. Though spicy, it was nothing much for Lin Jing. San, copying Lin Jing, picked up his own glass and tipped his head back to drink it all in one gulp. However, as soon as the wine hit San's mouth, he immediately spat it out with a pft. "Is this the taste of wine? It's so spicy." San opened his mouth, constantly gasping, says ha. San's reaction made a young girl at a nearby table chuckle out loud. The young girl looked to be about 20 years old, roughly the same age as San, but she was pretty and dressed in fine clothes, seeming to come from a wealthy family. And beside the young girl, there were several middle-aged men, all of whom were sturdy in build. But the girl and those men, including her, were all ordinary people who had never embarked on the path of cultivation. Though they hadn't taken up cultivation, it was obvious from their sturdy build and calloused areas of their bodies that they had practiced some kind of martial arts. Hearing the young girl's laughter made San blush instantly. Seeing this, a man beside the girl quickly spoke up to scold her. "Be mindful." The girl quickly sat up straight. "Understood, Uncle 3. After scolding her, the man stood up, raised his glass to Lin Jing, and said, "Fellow, I apologize. My niece is not well disciplined. I hope you can forgive her." "No worries." Lin Jing too raised his glass. Following this incident, San didn't try the wine again. Instead, he began to devour the dishes that had been served. At the other table, the man was quietly lecturing the young girl. "Linger, although our U corporation has some power, it's nothing compared to others. If you're careless and provoke others, it could lead to trouble, especially those cultivators who might exterminate someone's entire family over a disagreement. It might even spell doom for our entire U corporation, and you would be buried alongside it. Do you understand?" The young girl bowed her head, whispering, "I understand, Uncle 3. After speaking, the young girl also raised her head to sneak a peek at San, seemingly curious to see if he was the kind of ruthless cultivator. Their voices were very low, but to Lin Jing, it made no difference. Not to mention their whispering. Lin Jing could even hear golden core cultivators speaking secretly tower each other clearly. San, as he ate, couldn't stop exclaiming, "The city's delicacies are indeed tasty." Hearing this, the young girl chuckled again and quickly covered her mouth, almost unable to suppress her laughter. The man glanced at the young girl, who immediately sat upright, holding back her laughter. In fact, since earlier, the young girl had been stealing glances at San, but San, focused only on the table full of food, had not noticed it. Lin Jing then said, "The delicacies here are just so. If you want to eat, I can take you to those immortal cities, where the food made in those taverns is truly delicious." "Really?" San's eyes lit up. Lin Jing nodded and said, "Of course. However, because of your special body condition, even if we enter an immortal city, we can't stay long." San nodded upon hearing this and said, "Grandpa told me about it. I've been unwell from a young age and often fell ill. It was only because Grandpa often went into the mountains to gather herbs that I gradually recovered. Master, rest assured, just being able to taste the food there will satisfy me." Lin Jing nodded, then asked, "So, where do you want to go next?" Upon hearing this, San put down his chopsticks, pondered for a moment, and then said, "I've heard that to the north of Mo City, there's an immortal city called Tianxin City. I want to go there first." Upon hearing this, Lin Jing nodded and said, "All right, then next we'll head to Tianxin City." Although Lin Jing had been conversing with San, their conversation was not heard by anyone, nor did anyone even notice them. Of course, except for that young girl and the man beside her. At this moment, the young girl and the man were dumbstruck, their faces filled with disbelief. They watched as Lin Jing and his companion's lips moved, yet they couldn't hear any sound that they were making. This was surely a cultivator's method. What they feared had come to pass. They hadn't expected that the other party would actually be a cultivator. The thought of his niece's behavior just a moment ago made the man feel somewhat flustered. They were merely mortals, and if they carelessly offended a cultivator, it could lead to a disastrous ending, perhaps even involving their entire family. Meanwhile, the young girl now sat there too, daring not to move about carelessly any longer. Although Lin Jing was talking, he was well aware of the two's every action but didn't pay them any attention. At this time, San continued to ask Lin Jing, "Master, don't all cultivators need to meditate for their practice? Won't following me around interfere with your cultivation?" Lin Jing then spoke up. "Meditating certainly can improve one's cultivation, but meditation isn't everything for a cultivator. Sometimes we also need to set everything aside and experience the life of mortals." Sin shook his head and said, "I don't understand. Isn't it enough to just keep cultivating?" Lin Jing looked at San and then spoke. "To become an immortal, one must first understand humanity. At first, I didn't quite understand either. It was only recently that a senior taught me this." "Senior? Anyone that you, Master, call a senior must be very formidable," San said with a look of yearning. Lin Jing nodded. He didn't mention that the senior he was referring to was actually San's grandfather. Before they had left, San's grandfather had engaged in lengthy discussions with Lin Jing on numerous nights. Knowing that Lin Jing was at a critical juncture in advancing to the divinity transformation stage, he passed on his understanding to Lin Jing. He also taught Lin Jing a method, which was what he referred to as, "To become an immortal, one must first understand humanity." This essentially meant engaging with the world, temporarily setting aside the identity of a cultivator to assimilate into the mortal realm. However, whether this method suited Lin Jing or not, Lin Jing would have to comprehend and judge for himself. In fact, there was another method for Lin Jing. That was the blood infant pact. As long as the demon infant within was purified and the blood infant pact took effect, then the epiphanies and the cultivation of the old ancestor of the Nanming Immortal Sect would all be absorbed by Lin Jing. By then, Lin Jing would naturally enter the divinity transformation stage. As for now, The demon infant was sealed by San's grandfather and unable to draw in demonic chi, and the demonic chi within the demon infant was also slowly diminishing. Nonetheless, the duration of this process could not be determined. It could be as short as a few years or even span several decades. Therefore, Lin Jing pondered the method mentioned by San's grandfather while taking San on a wander around. Soon after, San had cleaned out all the delicacies on the table, and both were ready to leave. Then, Lin Jing called the server over, ready to settle the bill. "Honorable guests, your meal amounts to 2 taels of silver," the server said to Lin Jing with a smile. It was only at this point that Lin Jing suddenly remembered, much to his surprise, that this was a mortal tavern that accepted gold and silver, not spirit stones. Just then, the man sitting at the next table spoke to the server. "We'll cover the cost for their table." Saying this, the man, pulling the young girl with him, approached Lin Jing. After arriving, the man respectfully said to Lin Jing, "Esteemed Immortal, earlier my niece was ignorant and accidentally offended you, and I hope you won't take it to heart." Then, he signaled to the young girl with his eyes, who quickly understood and turned around to bow to San, saying, "I'm sorry." San had presumably never been in such a situation before, especially receiving an apology from a young girl. It's fine." San jumped to his feet as if to reach out to help her, but his hand stopped halfway, suddenly unsure of what to do. At that moment, he seemed a bit at a loss. San's face had turned red. Seeing San in such a state, Lin Jing quickly opened his mouth to break the silence and help San out. "It's fine, we are not such petty people." With Lin Jing taking the lead, San also quickly followed, saying, "Yes, indeed. Get up, I don't blame you." Upon hearing this, the young girl stood up. At that moment, the man spoke again. "Many thanks, esteemed Immortal. We are from a clan's merchant guild in Mo City. If you have time, and if the esteemed Immortal is willing, you are always welcome to visit our clan's merchant guild. Furthermore, the president of our clan's merchant guild is also a practitioner, and he is even a foundation establishment cultivator. However, an accident caused him to lose most of his cultivation, and he now only possesses the cultivation of the chi refinement stage. If the esteemed Immortal is willing to visit, perhaps our president could have a chance to exchange a few words with the senior." Lin Jing smiled and replied, "No need. We won't be staying in Mo City for long, and we'll be leaving soon. In that case, I won't disturb the esteemed Immortal any further." This man was very straightforward. Seeing that Lin Jing had no intention of visiting, he did not persist and took the young girl and left. After the man and the young girl had left, San stared at them for a long time, lost in thought. Lin Jing looked at San and teased, "What's the matter? Fancy her, do you?" San's face immediately turned red as he hastily denied it. "No, it's just that I've never seen such a beautiful young girl before." San's hometown, Yunling town, despite being called a town, had only a few dozen households, virtually no different from a mountain village. In these mountain villages, girls started helping with household chores from a young age. Over time, they naturally couldn't retain the same delicate features as that young girl. Moreover, the town was close to the Barren Forbidden Zone and lacked resources, so very few outsiders would visit there. Therefore, it was the first time San had encountered such a beautiful young girl. Lin Jing then smiled and said, "All right, she's gone now. Let's move on. If it's meant to be, you'll meet her again." After hearing this, San nodded. Then, the two of them left the tavern together. After leaving the tavern, Lin Jing took San around Mo City for a while. Just as they were about to leave, the weather took a turn for the worse, and it suddenly began to rain. The rain wasn't much of an issue for Lin Jing, but San was an ordinary person, and he couldn't bear the hardship of traveling in the rain. Additionally, Lin Jing was not in a hurry, so he directly found an inn in Mo City and settled down there. This time, Lin Jing had made preparations in advance. He found a merchant guild first and exchanged some spirit stones for silver before finding an inn. Spirit stones were not only useful for cultivators, but if ordinary people continuously carried a spirit stone with them, it could also benefit their health. Thus, the exchange rate of spirit stones for silver was quite high. A single lower-grade spirit stone could be exchanged for 100 taels of silver. However, it required visiting one of the larger merchant guilds to exchange them, because many ordinary people had never even seen a spirit stone and were naturally unable to exchange them. The rain continued relentlessly, pouring down for 2 days straight. Finally, after 2 days, the rain stopped and the sun reappeared. During those 2 days, the two stayed in the inn, and San grew restless. So, early on the 3rd day, the two packed up and left Imo City, heading towards their next destination. The next goal was, of course, Tianxin City, the immortal city that San was eagerly yearning for. There was a considerable distance between Imo City and Tianxin City, and they had to traverse a stretch of forest on the way. In these woods, there were not only wild beasts but also bandits who would rob travelers. If others wanted to travel through the forest to Tianxin City, it was natural for them to travel in groups or even pay some silver to join a merchant guild's caravan for the added security. The merchant guilds had guards for protection, so even if they encountered wild animals or bandits, the guild's guards could offer protection. However, Lin Jing and his companion set off directly. With Lin Jing there was no need to worry about either demonic beasts or bandits.